Hey everybody, today we're debating whether or not Quranic interpersonal values are good, and we are starting right now with Finding Truth in Muhammad's opening statement. Thanks so much for being with us, Finding Truth. The floor is all yours.
Okay, thanks, James. So my name is Ahmed, and I'm running Finding Truth, and this topic is a pretty exciting one because Islam and the Quran has elevated Arabs and then the whole humanity in a very dark time into the pinnacle of human behavior. My statement, which should take a few minutes, will go through three aspects. Number one, what does the Quran say about interpersonal values? And number two, what was the effect, what was the fruit of those interpersonal values on the history of Islam and today? So first, the Quran is very, sometimes it's very brief and very condensed. So I will start with Surah An-Nahl, the bees, ayah number 90, where it makes a brief statement about interpersonal values in the Quran. It says this, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. So this is Arabic, and what it means is that Allah commands or ordains or decrees justice, ihsan, which is goodness or benevolence or doing the best deeds in the best way or perfection or continuous observance of Allah. So this is the second one. إيتاء ذي القربى is generosity to those who are your relatives or your kin or those who are close to you. So three things that the Quran commands Muslims: justice, ihsan, and being good to your relatives or those close to you. And then he forbids three things. وينهى عن الفحشاء, and fahsha is obscene or shameful or indecent acts. Munkar is disapproved deeds by Allah or by the believers, and baghi, which is oppression. So this one ayah, and then it says يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. Allah is making this sermon to you lest you remember. So very brief, three things that Muslims should observe in the positive sense, and three things in the negative or the forbidden sense. Justice, number one, ihsan, being good or doing things in the best way possible, generosity to kin, and three that are forbidden. Now, this behavior has been further and further developed in details in the Quran, but for the brevity of the opening statement, maybe we will address this later in the debate. But what was the impact of this on the ground? So the impact of this on the ground is that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was a Quran walking the face of the earth. Many people, before Islam had any kind of power or state, actually joined Islam because Prophet Muhammad was a refined person in his attitude. Later, when Islam became had a nation that is defending it and spread over the world, actually, a huge part of what is known today as the Islamic world went into Islam not because the Islamic nation had access to those places, but because normal Muslims, traders, travelers, sometimes people who had different interactions with those peoples, and the people who interacted with Muslims found that those Muslims have a very unique way of behaving. We are talking about sub-Saharan Africa, for example. We are talking about East Asia, because Muslims did not go beyond China, I mean, as a nation. So you're looking at places like Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, etc. Hundreds of millions of Muslims today in Asia and in Africa had no contact with the official caliphate in terms of a nation, but they became part of global Islamic land because they interacted with Muslims. And until this modern day, where Islam is in as a country or as a state is at its weakest point in its history, still huge conversion waves happen in places that are typically non-Muslim places, where people convert to Islam because they run into somebody who is a true Muslim. Who leads his life in terms of his behavior as a Muslim, and they ask why this is the case, and they find that the reason is that he is a Muslim. They investigate further in Islam, and they become Muslims. Between that, even the nations that Muslims have conquered and they become part of the Islamic world after, for example, military action with the Romans or with the Persians, Muslims as individual Muslims now on the ground, due to their dealing with people of those countries in terms of their people converted to Islam, many or a majority of them were very resilient versus the religions of their previous occupiers, but they moved into Islam not only because Islam offers them a religion or a way of life, but because they saw how the first Muslims who arrived there were behaving as individuals with them. Once I had a conversation with a Christian priest, and he had an opinion that Prophet Muhammad is a prophet and Islam is a true religion from God. And I asked him, why would you make this assertion? And he said, because in our religion, we judge by the fruits. And since Islam had these fruits, the first generations who were really following Islam were exemplary of a religion that really refines human behavior. And this was very touching to me, but it is actually also very true. So in summary, the Quran commands in detail and overall a very refined human interpersonal discipline and behavior. And on the ground, this has led hundreds of millions of people or billions of people over history to join Islam, and those who lived with Muslims even converted to Islam for this reason, among others.
You got it. We'll
That's
kick
it.
right over to Muhammad, your teammate. Thanks for being with us, Muhammad.
Thank you for having me on, James. And Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. So that there isn't a person present that hasn't heard this greeting before. Peace be upon you. It's a heartfelt greeting that summarizes the relationship that should be between everyone and everything. A commandment from God to offer peace and to accept peace. And remember that God, the exalted, the great, is peace. Salamu alaikum expresses the true nature of what the Quran teaches us on how to treat each other. When interacting with fellow humans, and my brother Ahmed has touched on these subjects, but in summation, honesty, sincerity, charity, sacrifice, justice, forgiveness, trust, and inclusivity is the core principles that any believer should possess. Humans love seeing those traits in others. And the reason why we love these values is because God likes these values. And God has placed the soul from him within us. So in the true light of submitting to our Creator, we follow the path that is naturally bestowed upon all of us, which Muslims call as a fitra, or the natural inclination. When treating each other, God through the Quran has taught us to be honest in our matters and manners, and to speak the truth, even if it's against ourselves. All the problems between people today is the fact that someone is lying or being ingenuine. Usually when that occurs, problems start to arise between non-believers because of the simple fact that forgiveness is something that sounds like a good theory to a lot of people, but when it comes to practicality, not a lot of people practice it. However, when you go through the Muslim community, even you, David, if you accept that God has brought down on what God has brought down on our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the truth, and which is already confirming to what you have, and you become a Muslim, we would overlook all the history of hate and intolerance and we would treat you like a brother, and you know that very well. There isn't any other community that holds this brotherhood and acceptance and tolerance that Islam has because of what the Quran is teaching us. Whether traveling, in business, or even in jail, the brotherhood and sisterhood in Islam prevails to our loyalty towards God. We show this loyalty through our behavior towards each other and to the disbelievers. Nobody likes a bad-spoken, backbiting, lying, spying, slandering, jealous, cheating devils. Nobody wants to work or deal with such filth because it just brings pain, shame, and chaos. All of these said characteristics God has ordered us to never get close to or even partake in through the Quran. Everyone loves someone who goes above and beyond. If they promised you A, B, and C, They'll do what they said, and they'll also do X, Y, and Z, only to make sure you feel welcomed and for you to feel satisfied. To them, hell and upsetting God is not worth cheating you out of $1 or even $1 million. People love those who can hide the shame of others, hold on to secrets, and try to reconcile when people are fighting. These are the core principles of Quran. People love reliable, upfront, and honest individuals, and that's what the believer is. Having a good friend to rely on when you're in trouble or you have an issue is what everyone likes to have, right? So sufficient as God is such a friend, and Muslims are all God's allies and servants. Any atheist, Christian, Hindu, Jew, or whatever who has a trouble or requires some assistance, if you go to your closest mosque and ask for assistance, you will find someone to help you with a smile and who will also have the backbone to tell you the truth and will tell you exactly what they see without having to sugarcoat anything, but in a proper and polite manner. That's the essence of a believer, and that's the essence of the Quran. When it comes to people trying to lie and to deceive us, despite that we have the God-given right to retaliate to any harm that has oppressively been forced on us, most of us forego that right, and we tend towards mercy and forgiveness, because that's the default position of a believer. We believe in God's promise, and our Lord is merciful, and so are we, right? We rely that God will be addressing these issues, and He will be addressing everything that we have endured. We want to show mercy, and we want to be treated with mercy, and this is how we live our life throughout people. What other religion promotes visiting the sick, forces you to answer greetings in a similar or a better fashion, to measure your faith by how much empathy you show to others. If you notice yourself not showing enough empathy, you start to double check yourself and fix yourself and find the reasons why you're getting a hard heart. Now, here's the miracle. We do all that not for so-and-so to say that, like, look at Muhammad, he's such an upstanding individual. We do it so that our Lord is pleased with us and accepting of who we are. That's who our best friend is, and he's more important to us than our parents. And as a result, the world and whoever's in it, who has a heart and can recognize the light that's in our heart, accept and relies on us, and we live as honorable and fulfilling life. So we get the most fulfilling life just by following these values that nobody in the world can really debate or say that these values are not proper. And that light is, and it's all due to the fact that we follow the light that was brought down to Prophet Muhammad, and we follow the ideology and philosophy and conduct of our Prophet Abraham, peace be upon them both, and all of which was revealed by God, who created all of this. This is his system, so he knows what's the best approach to how to deal with each other and what to do to have the best feelings and the best, most honorable life. Working with and interacting with everyday believers and Muslims, you will always feel like you're in good hands. And I'd like to pass it over to the other side.
Thank you very much for that opening statement from Finding Truth and Muhammad. Want to let you know a couple of quick housekeeping things before we give it over to the no side for their opening statement as well. Folks, want to let you know, no matter what walk of life you are from, we are glad to have you here, whether you be Muslim, atheist, Christian, you name it. We are glad that you're with us. In fact, if you haven't yet, consider hitting that subscribe button, as we have many more juicy debates coming up. For example, as you can see at the bottom right of your screen, this is going to be a big one. We're excited. In fact, Nuriyah, who's a part of this debate right now, she'll be facing Daniel Hakikachu on whether or not mandatory veiling for women in Muslim countries is morally good. That will be a juicy debate. You don't want to miss it, so do hit that subscribe button right now. And with that, we're going to kick it over to David and Nuriyah. Thanks so much for being with us. The floor is all yours for your opening.
Thank you, James. You hear me?
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you. And thank you, Ahmed and Mohammed, for giving us the Muslim perspective on this topic. And a special thanks to Nuriyah for openly challenging an ideology that not only calls for your public execution for apostasy, but also one that says you're too stupid to do so effectively. Since Muhammad said that, not this Muhammad, the 7th century Muhammad, said that women are intellectually deficient, as far as I'm concerned, if Nuriyah makes a compelling case in this debate, it'll be a double refutation of Islam. So, are Quranic values on interpersonal conduct good? I'm happy to admit that we can find examples of good values in the Quran. Allah's eternal speech in the Quran seems to be very closely tied to Muhammad's mood and desires. And sometimes Muhammad was in a good mood and had good desires. That's when we get some good revelations from Allah. But other times Muhammad was in a bad mood and had bad desires. And that's when Allah's eternal speech suddenly got really, really bad. The problem with pointing to some of the nice teachings in the Quran about charity or something like that is that the Quran's clear calls for the violent subjugation of the world and for the persecution of non-Muslims are so horrifyingly bad, they completely overshadow anything positive we can say. In Surah 3, verse 110 of the Quran, Allah says to Muslims, "You are the best of peoples ever raised up for mankind." Muslims are the best people in the world, according to Allah. What about Jews and Christians? Surah 98, verse 6 reads in the Hilleli Khan translation, "Verily, those who disbelieve in the religion of Islam, the Quran, and Prophet Muhammad from among the people of the scripture, Jews and Christians, and al-mushrikun, those who associate partners with Allah, will abide in the fire of hell. They are the worst of creatures." Non-Muslims are the worst of creatures. Muslims are the best of peoples. According to the Quran, then, Muslims and non-Muslims are not equal. Muslims are the best, non-Muslims are the worst. Kind of hard to establish good interpersonal conduct when your God tells you that certain people are worse than pigs or dogs, and as we'll soon see, that they should be treated as such. Not surprisingly, given the utter inferiority of Jews and Christians, the Quran condemns friendship with us. As we read in Surah 5, verse 51, "O you who believe, do not take the Jews and the Christians for friends. They are friends of each other." We know that Muhammad took this command seriously because he said in Sahih Muslim, "I will expel the Jews and Christians from the Arabian Peninsula and will not leave any but Muslims." If Muhammad himself couldn't imagine living side by side with Jews and Christians, I don't know how we can say that the Quran promotes good interpersonal conduct towards Jews and Christians, let alone towards atheists, Hindus, and so on. But it's one thing to say, our group is superior to everyone else, or don't be friends with other groups. It's something else to promote persecution and violence toward other groups. And that's exactly what the Quran does. In Surah 48, verse 29, Allah declares, "Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, and those who are with him are severe against disbelievers and merciful among themselves." Not according to me, not according to Nuriyah, according to Allah himself, Muslims are supposed to be severe against disbelievers and merciful only toward fellow Muslims. In Surah 9, verse 29, Allah orders Muslims to fight Christians and Jews until we acknowledge our inferiority and pay tribute to the Muslim community. Allah says, "Fight those who believe not in Allah, nor the last day, nor hold that forbidden which hath been forbidden by Allah and his messenger, nor acknowledge the religion of truth from among the people of the book," Jews and Christians, "until they pay the jizya with willing submission and feel themselves subdued." I've seen plenty of Muslims try to reinterpret this command, usually by the context defense, but there's nothing in the literary or historical context that makes this verse any more peaceful. In fact, I would argue that a careful examination of the literary and historical contexts makes it worse. Turns out to be a money-making scheme. Fight people until they convert, in which case they pay zakat, or until they acknowledge their inferiority and pay jizya. Either way, they're going to pay you. This is the 7th century Arabian mafia. Of course, compared to atheists or Hindus, Christians and Jews are the fortunate ones. We at least have the option of paying the jizya. Other groups have to convert or die. But it's not just Christians, Jews, atheists, Hindus, and so on who are targeted for violence in the Quran. Even Muslims are in danger from Allah's commands. In Surah 9, verse 73, Allah says, "O Prophet, strive hard against the unbelievers and the hypocrites and be unyielding to them." Notice, Allah calls for jihad not only against unbelievers, non-Muslims, but also against hypocrites, people who claim to be Muslims but aren't fully submitting to the commands of Allah and Muhammad. And it gets even more dangerous for Muslims because according to Surah 4, verse 65, Anyone who doesn't mindlessly accept everything Muhammad says is not a real Muslim. Allah says, but know, by your Lord, they can have no faith until they make you, O Muhammad, judge in all disputes between them and find in themselves no resistance against your decisions and accept them with full submission. A Muslim can have no real faith. He's not a real Muslim until he finds in himself no resistance against any of Muhammad's decisions. This means that Muslims who reinterpret the teachings of Allah and Muhammad, or who question or doubt the teachings of Allah and Muhammad, are either hypocrites or apostates. Either way, Allah demands violence against them. Just ask Shias or Ahmadis or any other Muslim group that finds themselves outnumbered by a larger Muslim group. So these are the commands of Allah about interpersonal conduct. Muslim apologists typically reinterpret these verses. They tell us what Allah really meant when he said things like, fight those who do not believe. Unfortunately, Allah claims repeatedly in the Quran that his commands are perfectly clear. If Allah really meant what modern Muslims say, if he really meant something different from what he commanded from all eternity in his eternal speech, then the Quran is not clear and Allah is lying. Now, just so no one misunderstands me, I'm only talking about what the Quran teaches. I'm not talking about what individual Muslims believe or how individual Muslims behave. This debate isn't about what our Muslim friends here believe. It's about what the Quran promotes, is endless violence against non-Muslims and even against Muslims who have some wrong ideas, what we would consider good interpersonal conduct. Not me. But I barely scratched the surface of what the Quran has to say about interpersonal conduct. Nuriyah, is there anything you'd like to add?
Nope, that's good for now. Thank you, David.
Thank you very much for that opening statement. We're going to go into open dialogue, but before we do want to mention another housekeeping type thing. In particular, folks, we're very excited about this. TikTok allows live streaming. Once we get to 1,000 followers, we'll be able to live stream debates just like this one on TikTok. The reason that's important is because that'll increase modern day debates exposure and get these ideas and these debates out to a broader audience across the web as TikTok is growing ferocious. It's off the charts. So I got to tell you, my dear friends, if you have a TikTok account, I'm going to pin it at the top of the chat, our TikTok link. We would be very grateful if you'll follow us there. As like I said, hitting 1,000 followers will enable us to unlock the feature of live streaming there so we can increase the expansiveness of this neutral platform across the web. That link for the TikTok is also in the top of the description box. And with that, we're going to jump into open dialogue.
Oh, James, sorry, I would actually like to piggy off of what David Wood said. I'd like to give my opening.
You got it.
That's okay.
Go for it, yeah.
All right, cool. Thank you to both the gentlemen, obviously arguing the affirmative here today, for David for partnering with me, and obviously Modern Day Debates for hosting. Hopefully, this debate will give David and myself a prime opportunity to expose the Quran for the poor, arguably vile and reprehensible set of interpersonal conduct it sets out, and why it's exceptionally outdated in the 21st century. Since we're talking about the Quran, let's dedicate a moment to the alleged author, Allah. Allah, in no uncertain terms, calls himself the best of deceivers, not once, not twice, but at least 5 times in the Quran. Now, when most of us think about equitable, reasonable, just, and empathetic values for society at large, would you associate the art of deception with that? No? Well, it's interesting that the supposed creator of the world says in Quran 13:42, to Allah is all ownership and he's the master of deception. The master of deception. That's an attribute of the creator of the supposed religion of peace. Not low-level deceiving, but Allah is a maverick, a master of it. If that wasn't bad enough, according to multiple Quran verses, such as 4143, 639, 7178, there's no guidance for the one who Allah deceives. So for an ex-Muslim apostate like myself, if Allah, the master of deception, has chosen to deceive me, there's no chance I can make good in his eyes, through no fault of my own. I'd like to ask those listening if Allah seems like a trustworthy entity to guide, let alone command us to follow divinely ordained interpersonal values, with the threat of punishment always looming. As David mentioned, Muslims can't take non-Muslims as friends. They must convert, pay protection money in the form of jizya, be subdued and humbled or killed. Is this good interpersonal, let alone good interfaith conduct? Quran 867 also talks about beheading non-Muslim captives. Now, as a woman and a feminist, let's talk about what it says about the fairer sex. Muslim men can rape their wives and force them to bed anytime, anywhere, and under any circumstances. Surah 2:223 says, your women are your fields. You may enter your field whichever way you like. Two things. Here, this completely eradicates the concept of consent and allows marital rape to go unpunished and unnoticed. As of 2019, nearly 150 countries around the world outlawed marital rape in some form or the other. Yet the Quran, which is meant to be timeless guidance, can't seem to get it quite right. Women are merely sex objects, not human beings. A Muslim husband can punish you and use your sexual organs at his discretion purely to satiate his carnal appetite. Notice the terminology used in the Quran, enter your field. I can't begin to imagine how vulgar and disrespectful the analogy is. Women also get the short end of the stick when it comes to inheriting. Quran 4:11 states a man gets double the share of inheritance over a female. A woman's testimony also counts for just half of a man's. Surah 2:282 says, let two men from among you hear witness to all such documents. But if two men not be available, there should be one man and two women to hear witness. So if one forgets anything, the other may remind her. This archaic law wouldn't be supported by any non-Islamic court in the world, and further proves this political ideology masquerading as a religion was made by men for men. We've seen examples of women being silenced and abused, and we heard from David how it oppresses non-believers to varying degrees. But this next one is arguably one of the most depraved alongside divorcing prepubescent girls. Islamically, only the man has the right to divorce. If he pronounces it 3 times, it becomes absolute. According to Surah 2:230, in this case, not only is the divorce irrevocable, but the spouse can't remarry until the wife has married another man, consummated the marriage with him, and then that marriage is ended. Some scholars try to explain this gross injustice away by framing it as a punishment for men, claiming men would be so wary so as not to pronounce the divorce because they know how severe the consequences are. My question is, why is the woman being punished for something she had no control or agency over in the first place? Why is Allah playing with the emotions of a genuinely repentant couple? Why does the burden fall on a woman's shoulders? In most progressive nations, we have much better remedies, yet the Quran relies on forced sexual activity with a third party. Quran 65:4 means babies and little girls are not safe either. It sets no upper or lower age limit on who you can marry. A newborn baby can technically be married off and fall under the category of those who have not yet menstruated. Besides the truly sickening nature of it, most reasonable people would say this is something of a backward, primitive, senseless, predatory nature, and in no way a good interpersonal value system for marriage. According to Surah 4:3, a man can have 4 wives. It also says, if you fear you might not do justice to them, marry only one, or marry those who have fallen in your possession. It de facto promotes sex slavery. The clause, marry those who have fallen in your possession, means slave girls captured after a war who become sexual property. Allah facilitates non-Muslim women being exchanged for sex and money. Muhammad married Safiya, a 17-year-old Jewish girl he acquired from the plunder of Khaybar, hours after he had her husband Kinana tortured to death. To add insult to injury, her name was given to her by Muhammad in honor of being his specific portion of the war booty. The limit on 4 wives also seems redundant because men can sleep with unlimited slave girls. Men can marry multiple, even Christian or Jewish women of the book, but Muslim women can't and must only marry a Muslim man. Even in heaven, men get 72 virgins, yet a woman's needs are ignored in every sense of the word. Not only does Islam approve of slavery, it makes it an important part of the economy. We see that in Quran 30:28. Do you take your slaves as partners in what we have given you for sustenance, power, respect, and wealth? However, you fear them not to share with you your wealth as you fear each other. Allah basically forbids Muslims who received wealth and power from him from sharing it. Allah makes it clear that he is the God to Muslims and Muslims are basically gods to their slaves. Allah doesn't want partners to share his power. Similarly, Muslims should not share their wealth with slaves. Husbands may hit their wives if they merely fear high-handedness. Note, fearing something is different from it actually occurring, notwithstanding the fact that the concept of nushuz is extremely sexist. Quran 4:34 says, if you fear high-handedness from your wives, remind them, then leave them apart in bed and beat them. It's safe to say, dogs in the West have more rights than Muslim women. A man who beat a dog in America got 25 years jail time, but in Islamic countries, men get off scot-free. On Egyptian TV, they glorify wife beating, while on Saudi TV, a man demonstrates how to do it. If you happen to beat a woman in a country with Sharia, you're a hero teaching his wife how to behave. The Quranic manifesto is one of the greatest threats to women. Women in Iran and Afghanistan are facing the brunt of this harsh reality as we speak. The only people safe under this value system are straight Muslim men, that's for you, Jimmy, and nobody else, not myself, not David, not anyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are going to jump into the open dialogue. Want to remind you, in addition to that TikTok link, which is in the description box, our guest links are there. My dear friends, if you're watching live, I encourage you, open up an additional tab or tabs, and you can put our guest links in there right now, so you for sure remember to check out their channels. That's also in the description box for the podcast, where we have David's, if I've been saying it wrong, Nuriyah,
but that's okay.
I'm sorry, that's embarrassing. Nuriyah and Muhammad's David and Finding Truth's links are all in the description box at the podcast as well. Check out our guest links. And with that, thank you very much, all four of you. The floor is all yours. David?
James, I'm a bit confused. Weren't we going to have
you're right, rebuttals.
Rebuttals.
Thank
rebuttals,
you.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
I'm waiting for the rebuttals, yeah.
I'm in my old mindset. It's 10-minute rebuttals.
Getting names wrong, format wrong. My goodness.
I'm not a morning person. We're
Amateur hour.
To Finding Truth and Muhammad for 10 minutes. So roughly 5 minutes each. The floor is all yours for that first rebuttal.
Thank you. So, let's start counting now. So actually, I'm a little bit surprised of the opening statements of both Nuriyah and David. And the reason is that we are discussing specifically whether interpersonal values in the Quran are good. So David talked about so many things, Nuriyah talked about so many things that are off this topic, things that are related to the legal system of Islam, international relations in Islam, politics in Islam, war and peace in Islam, etc. But the topic of this debate is actually interpersonal values, specifically. And hence, I would like to stay on the topic. So first of all, I would like to thank David actually for acknowledging that the Quran has some good values being mentioned there. But he said that sometimes that changes. I'm talking about, again, interpersonal values. And I asked him, where did that change? Maybe in his rebuttal, he would answer me over that. But since there wasn't so much material about that in his and Nuriyah's statements, I will try to pick the things that are relevant. So one of the things that are relevant is what David mentioned about the Muslims being the best of people. And he quoted a piece of a Quranic verse. So in all honesty, quoting a piece of a verse is not the way to convey its meaning. So the verse says, I happen to have memorized the Quran at one part of my life. I need to do some revisions. But the piece says, كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس. You have been the best of nations or the best of communities that has been brought forward to the world or to the people. But it doesn't stop there because it qualifies the reason. Because it says right after that, تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر وتؤمنون بالله. So why are you the best of people? Because you do three things. تأمرون بالمعروف, you guide people to doing good deeds. وتنهون عن المنكر, and you tell people not to do bad deeds. وتؤمنون بالله, and you believe in God. And you can notice that it has started with the interpersonal thing first. That a Muslim who is a part of a nation that is the best nation has to be the best Muslim. He has to be doing good deeds, and he has to then ask people to follow his lead and to refrain from doing bad deeds, and then to ask people to follow his deeds. Now, did the Quran, the reason I'm commenting on this specific piece from what David said is that if I am as a Muslim looking down to other people just because I'm a Muslim and they are not Muslims, it will affect my interpersonal behavior towards them, obviously. But this is not the case. But did the Quran only mention Muslims as being the best? No, actually the Quran, before mentioning Muslims as being the best of nations, he mentions Israelites, people who followed Moses, as at one point of time being the best, being the chosen ones. Actually, this is mentioned in the Quran clearly. And in Surah Al-Baqarah, he talks to people of the book for a long part of Surah Al-Baqarah and in other places in the Quran. And he specifically says, I have chosen you. And the reason Allah makes them the chosen people is that because they carried the same message before the arrival of Muslims. And then he starts blaming them for letting go of the way of conduct that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordered them to follow in their books. Whether, for example, it is like observing the Sabbath when it relates to their religion practice and other practices, but very importantly, interpersonal practices. And then he says, now Muslims, you are going to carry this torch to light up the world once again. If you behave the way I want you to behave, because you are carrying the torch, you become the best of the communities that are walking the earth. But if not, there is no, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not take sides. So later on in the Quran, he says like this, he says very clearly this, ليس بأمانيكم ولا أماني أهل الكتاب من يعمل سوءا يجزى به. It is not by what you wish or the people of the book wish, but he who does bad deeds will be punished or will be held accountable. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not treat Muslims in a different way than non-Muslims. He treats people based on abidance to his values. And this is my 5 minutes. I leave the rest of the 5 minutes to my friend Muhammad here.
Thank you, brother. So yeah, just to carry on a little bit about the verse on when he's saying kuntum khayru ummatin. So why don't you just carry on the verse even more than that? So God is telling us why we're the best of nations, but then he starts addressing the people of the book. You're saying that they're not part of it. God says, well, if the people of the book believe, it would have been better for them, right? And then if they fight you, they're gonna be cowards and run away because they don't show loyalty. And then later in the exact same page, God says, but they're not all the same. From the people of the books, those who believe in God, who go quick to do good things for others, those who believe in the day and who saying ya'muruna bil ma'ruf wa yanhuna 'anil munkar, so they promote good deeds and they try to stop evil deeds, and they bow down in the middle of the night praying to God and reciting the verses that's in their books. Those people are righteous. God literally says that in the exact same page. So in summary, all that you guys debated and everything that you brought off is such a twisted and emotional rhetoric that just shows copy pastes of the Quran. It's like taking the whole literature and just taking little pieces and making this ideology or this philosophy that had absolutely nothing to A with the Quran and B with this topic. So everything that Nuriyah said is such a twisted thing that most of the people and most of the verses that you said don't say anything that you said. So when you're saying 1342, it has nothing to do about someone being a deceiver. Mecca is a plan. God doesn't talk about him being owning the land and the skies in that specific verse. Show me the rape verse, because I'm sorry, I have a lot of sisters and I have a lot of dads and uncles. They're not going around raping people, but it's okay. You can delude yourself as ever you want, and the devil can decorate your mind and whatever you want. Inheritance, in the same thing when it comes to you're saying a man has double the share of a woman. But in reality, if you look at the same verse, the mom, if the guy doesn't have a kid, the mom is inheriting double the dad. That's not fair. So why aren't you talking about how the gender that the woman is taking, the mother is taking double the dad when he doesn't have a child? That's in the exact same verse. Go look it up. And then the second thing is, your whole life as a man, you're providing for the women. I'm giving her most of the stuff that I have. I'm not allowed to take it back. I can't inherit offer. I just keep giving everything that I have to her. I have other obligations. That's why she's taking a smaller cut. Like me as a man, I'm supposed to be the provider. So that's why, and I've been giving to my wife most of my life, everything that I have is just so that she is provided for. So when I'm dead, I have my kids and other obligations that I have to give to. But again, you just take things in out of context and you throw it. The 72 versions is based on a hadith that's da'if. So it's not even that the Prophet said that. It's just maybe he said that, but there is no enough proof or testimony. And you're talking about the word neshes. You just throw these terms to show people that you know, but in reality, you know jack. Because that same word was used for a woman. If you found neshes in your women, right? You're supposed to do X and X and X. And then later in the same surah, God is saying hey, women, if you sense meshes from your men, your husbands, that they're going to leave you or they're going to forsake you, then try to reconcile, because reconciling is good. And those who reconcile are those who have awareness of God and wants to make the world peace. We don't say peace be upon you when it's all about violence. And when it comes to violence, David, again, it's the same problem. You take copy paste and you don't say the truth. We cannot, like God says, like those that come to you, disbelievers, mushriks and whatever, those that come to you and they don't, like they give you peace, وَيَلْقُوا إِلَيْكُمُ السَّلَامُ وَيَكِفُّوا أَيْدِيهِمْ, and they don't throw their hands at you in fighting. Those we did not give you a way on top of them. So we مَعَطَيْنَا عَلَيْكُمْ سَبِيلًا, so we can't fight you, okay? But those that want to fight us, then yeah, we're not doormats like how modern day Christianity is. It's all about, hey, you know what? You guys step all over us and we're okay with it. No, there's certain times you're going to have to stand up at those guys fighting you. You're talking about the 21st century. Because of all this disaster, your governments and these people around that are so far away from like the values that are in the books, which is whether it's the gospel or the Torah or the Quran, and they're making up all these crazy theories. The thing that people are finding the stability in that makes more sense to reality is the Quran. So a lot of people are going into the Quran. And I personally felt it. Ahmed also personally felt it. When we deal with people that don't know the Quran and they see how we're just acting, like we're honest with the people, like disbelievers, or we treat people nicely, or we go above and beyond to make people feel hospitable, with our hospitality, people want to become Muslim. They start being intrigued by Islam. And yeah, so like I wish you guys can like that have this like approach when it comes to the Quran and to be more honest.
We're going to kick it over to David and Nuriyah for their first rebuttal. Thank you very much. The floor is all yours for 10 minutes.
Well, thanks again, Ahmed and Mohammed. In my opening statement, I agreed that there are some positive values in the Quran, but that these are massively overshadowed by the Quran's commands to violently subjugate unbelievers. Ahmed said we were going off topic. I don't recall where. I mean, interpersonal is between persons, and everything Nuriyah and I talked about was between persons, either between Muslims and non-Muslims, or between Muslims and Muslims of another group, or between men and women. As far as the best of peoples, Ahmed and Mohammed tried to, say, well, this is just about, the things Muslims were doing. And well, even Jews at one time were the best of peoples. But these things start to change. The attitude towards Jews and Christians massively changes when they reject Muhammad. Jews and Christians are doing the same things. What are they doing? Are they running around behaving horribly evil and Allah was calling them good anyway? No, they're the same. They just reject Muhammad, and then all of a sudden the rules suddenly change and the Quranic view of them change. And just let me tell you, because we've been accused of taking things out of context, where we're reading these things out of context. Well, I quoted Surah 9, verse 29, opening. Let's go ahead and read what this says in context, because this is addressing Jews and Christians. So the passage begins in Surah 9, verse 28, and says, "O you who believe, truly the pagans are unclean, so let them not, after this year of theirs, approach the sacred mosque. And if you fear poverty, soon will Allah enrich you, if He wills, out of His bounty, for Allah is all-knowing, all-wise." So Allah is going to enrich the Muslim community after the pagans were no longer allowed to interact with them during the pilgrimage. Well, how is Allah going to enrich them? He says He's going to enrich them. Next verse. "Fight those who believe not in Allah nor the last day, nor hold that forbidden which hath been forbidden by Allah and His messenger, nor acknowledge the religion of truth from among the people of the book," Jews and Christians, "until they pay the jizya with willing submission and feel themselves subdued." Notice all of the requirements, all of the justifications for fighting us have to do with basic religious beliefs and practices here. There's no attacking the Muslim community or engaging in war or taking part in evil behaviors. It's saying don't hold forbidden that which has been forbidden by Allah and Muhammad. So if your religion forbids one thing or doesn't forbid something that Islam forbids, that's a justification for fighting you. You don't have to be doing something evil. You just have your religion just has to forbid something differently, and that's a justification for fighting. But why fight Jews and Christians who are people of the book? Well, next verse. And the Jews say Ezra is the son of Allah, and the Christians say the Messiah is the son of Allah. These are the words of their mouths. They imitate the saying of those who disbelieved before. Allah's curse be upon them, how they are turned away. So the claim is that since Christians say the Messiah is the son of Allah, that's the justification for fighting us. So this has nothing to do with Christians going out and being horrible, evil people. It's about Christian belief. That's the justification for fighting us. Have we done anything else? Next verse, 931. They took their rabbis and monks to be their lords besides Allah and Christ the son of Mary, yet they were commanded to worship but one God. There is no God but he. Praise and glory to him. Far is he from having the partners they associate with him. Any other reasons for fighting us? Next verse. They desire to put out the light of Allah with their mouths. Notice it says with our mouths, not by the sword. This is referring to what we say. This is referring to us stating what we believe about God. But Allah will not allow but that his light should be perfected, even though the unbelievers may detest it. Allah won't allow Jews and Christians to spread our beliefs through preaching. But how's Allah going to stop us? Next verse, 933. It is he who has sent his messenger, Muhammad, with guidance and the religion of truth, Islam, to prevail it over all religion, even though the idolaters may detest it. So how is Allah going to prevail the religion over all others? Surah 9, verse 29, fight those who believe not in Allah until they pay the jizya with willing submission and feel themselves subdued. Now that's the entire passage, and it relates to what our friends are saying. You Jews and Christians, you're not the best of peoples anymore, and it's because of your behavior and so on. This says it's because of what we believe and what we say. So I'm in this boat right now. There are calls to fight against me. Why? Because I say Jesus is Lord. So I'm in this same boat. So there are real world consequences for the teachings. These are interpersonal. Claims, because this is a command for one person to violently subjugate me. And I actually have it much better than Nuriyah, because she's an apostate in addition to being a critic of Islam. And so I'll hand it over to her.
Thank you, David. So it's kind of interesting in general that you guys wanted to change the topic to interpersonal values, because just like people, I'm sure at the beginning of this debate, were also saying, what does that even mean in the context of the Quran? Any kind of interaction with any person, interperson, can be constituted for the purpose of this debate. So if you want to stick to strictly sweet principles like mercy and, generosity, as Ahmed did in his opening statement, I agree. As David also conceded, like the Quran has calls for that, but I would go as far as to say the generosity and the justice that you talk about, the mercy that Allah likes to call himself as one of his 99 names, Ar-Rahman, is only extended to Muslims. We see that in Quran 48:29, where it says, Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, and those who are with him are strong against unbelievers, but compassionate amongst each other. So again, this is only relating to Muslims. And I know you're trying to add that any other group is not counted in the purpose of this discussion, but I think that's a ridiculous angle to take. The Quran 47:35 also clearly states, cry not and ask not for peace as long as you have the upper hand. This constantly shows that Islam is in a perpetual state of war and is acting on whether or not Muhammad and the Muslims at the time were in power or not. Ahmed also mentioned that when Muslims would come across other nations or peoples, they had a unique way of behaving, I believe was the words that you used. My question to you would be, is the unique way of behaving that you talk about giving them two options, whether to convert or die? And also Quran 9:23, even if they were to succumb to Islam's wrath of the sword, it says I won't use the word revert, but any convert to Islam can't take his own family as friends. So again, I don't know if that's interpersonal enough for the both of you. Moving on to Muhammad, not the supposed prophet, but the Muhammad here with us. You said lying isn't good, blah, blah, blah. That's the worst thing a human being can do. Allah hates it, all of that jazz. But please tell me if I'm wrong. Certain schools of thought in Islam allow you to lie if the motive is for Islamic propaganda, right? So as long as the motive is to expand Islam and to portray it in this positive light, you are allowed to lie on certain occasions. I believe there's multiple hadiths that give 3 occasions when you are allowed to lie. One of them is definitely in a state of war. And as I said, Islam is a political ideology that is always in a state of war. So yeah, I don't know how that fits in with your lying that Allah considers a sin, Muhammad, but you also said, there's beautiful things such as, you should answer people nicely when they respond or answer even better. Again, that relates only to Muslims. If a Muslim greets you, you need to give an equal, if not better greeting. However, again, the hadith even back up the fact, does it not say, Muhammad, in the hadith that you should push Jews and Christians to the narrowest part of the road? So I don't know what you're talking about. If the Quran calls for violence against them and the hadith verifies it, I think you're the one who's deluded, mate. I'll call it cognitive dissonance or you doing taqiyya or whatever, but you need to take a hard look in the mirror about who's deluded. Lastly, I want to ask you, do you know what marital rape is? I don't think you do, but the rest of the world does. Name me one Islamic country that has criminalized marital rape. In fact, any woman that goes to report rape in an Islamic country gets done for adultery. Look at that poor woman that was in Qatar trying to help the World Cup. She got raped and she got done for adultery as opposed to that. So I don't know. Again, I hope that's interpersonal enough for you. It is definitely occurring between 2 people. So whether you guys are trying to, make this into a gray area topic-wise, it's all relevant. Thank you.
You got it. Thank you very much. We're going to kick it into the second rebuttal. This one is 8 minutes, so about 4 minutes per person. We'll kick it over to you, Finding Truth, and Muhammad. The floor is all yours. Might be on mute if I can't tell if either of you talking.
Oh, whoops. And I actually realized that part of my previous rebuttal, my camera was down. Okay, so just let me know if this happens again. Anyway, so let's start now. All right, so thanks for your statements. Let me again just start from where Nuriyah ended. So she says about the topic. The topic is interpersonal values. Actually, nothing being changed here. So I will. I took the last time the matter of kuntum khayra ummah. You have been the best community race for people. The second thing that what was relevant that David said was actually related to taking Jews and Christians as friends. And he says we're not allowed to take Jews and Christians as friends, which is false. The Quran makes a clear statement about whether Muslims are allowed to take Christians as friends or not, or Jews, or people of any other religion to that matter, because later when Muslims went to other countries that are not Christians or Jews, they treated people who had specific religions in those countries the same way like they treated Christians and Jews, like people of Persia, for example, who were said to be worshipping according to an old religion that was corrupted. So what does the Quran say about that matter? Because why am I referring to this? Because it makes a difference in somebody's interpersonal treatment with others, if they are Christians and Jews, if he should not religiously have a relation of friendship or an amicable relation with them. So it's quite relevant. So what does the Quran say? The Quran says this. It says, لا ينهاكم الله عن الذين لم يقاتلوكم في الدين ولم يخرجوكم من دياركم أن تبروهم وتقسطوا إليهم إن الله يحب المقسطين. What does it mean? Allah does not forbid you, respecting those who have, or with respect to those who have not made war against you on account of your religion and have not driven you forth from your homes, that you show them kindness and deal with them justly. Surely Allah loves the doers of justice. Tabarruhum, al-birr, is doing something on top, doing a good thing towards somebody. So why is this ayah mentioned in that specific text? Because there are ayat, as David said, in the Quran that relates to war, that relates to the action of the Islamic nation towards another nation that shows animosity to it. Now, this ayah is there to tell the individual, the Muslim individual, if this applies to him or not. So it tells him it does not apply to your relation with somebody else who is not fighting you and is not driving you out of your home. You should actually be kind and you should give to them and you should be just to them. And then the next ayah makes a further elaboration. These are ayat in Surah Al-Mumtahina, verses 8 and 9. It says this, إِنَّمَا يَنْهَاكُمُ اللَّهُ عَنِ الَّذِينَ يُقَاتِلُوكُم فِي الدِّينِ عَنِ الَّذِينَ قَاتَلُوكُم فِي الدِّينِ وَأَخْرَجُوكُم مِّن دِيَارِكُمْ وَظَاهَرُوا عَلَى إِخْرَاجِكُمْ أَن تَوَلَّوْهُمْ وَمَن يَتَوَلَّهُمْ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ. God forbids you from those who have, now I'm translating in my mind, God forbids you, this is not translation, this is translation of meaning to be accurate. God forbids you from those who have fought you or driven you out of your homes and made alliances against you to drive you out of your homes, that you befriend them. تَوَلَّوْهُمْ وَمَن يَتَوَلَّهُمْ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ. And those who befriend them, those are the oppressors. So these two ayat will resolve the whole thing about everything that David said about friendship or wilayah or tawallawhum. The other ayat, if I say in Arabic, use the same words. So if it's a country at war with another country, even on the individual level, those who are not combatants are excluded. And definitely people who live with Muslims, whether in their communities or in the Islamic communities, have nothing to do with them. If somebody is good to us, is not fighting us, not driving us from our homes, then normal relationship, neighbor, friend, is all okay. Now, there has been so many other topics that have been raised. Some of them are relevant, some are not. I think in the open discussion, we'll come to them. I leave the rest of the 8 minutes to Muhammad.
Okay, so yeah, interpersonal skills, just a quick Google, is literally includes verbal, nonverbal communication, and the ability to handle conflict, teamwork, and empathy, listening, and positive attitude. It's an individual values. You're talking about like the whole communities and the issues within other communities. But like now, David, there's a concept you need to understand when it comes to religion. Okay, so this is your law. So God is a king. We're serving this king. If you're not showing loyalty to your king, to your creator, at that point, you're self-oppressive. And because you're self-oppressive, you're like literally showing what the Quran says about people like you. You become deaf, dumb, and blind. You think you're guided. You think you become arrogant. You're saying things, but in reality, you're saying a lot of garbage. Okay. And because you show the lack of loyalty, you cause problems to the kids that are coming, and you're causing problems to the society around you. So yeah, Reagan attacks you, not for you to believe. It's just so that, you know what? People like you consider the money. So no, I'd rather just fake convert to Islam, and then your kids are going to be Muslims and their generations actually turn. So this is how it happened in places like Albania and Turkey. Their kids are really good Muslims while their parents weren't, but they just converted to save some money. So that's the ideology behind it, so that there isn't a war. But aside from that, like you're talking about the whole verse, the people are saying that God has a son. Like, you understand the mental breakdown you have when you say that the ultimate king that never dies has an heir. That's you turning against your God. So yeah, you're showing lack of loyalty. And speaking of loyalty, how in a million years can you justify, or your religion allows you to go team up with an atheist, an ex-Muslim atheist, okay, that doesn't believe in God, to go defend or to attack a different religion that does believe in the same God that you believe in? Because we're going back to not Jesus's values or Muhammad's values, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, both of them, but it's actually Abraham's mentality. Abraham is the one who had this mentality that we have and the conduct that we have. The person that led us closest to this mentality is Prophet Muhammad. That's why, وَاتَّبِعُوا مِلَّةَ إِبْرَاهِيمَ حَنِيفًا. So follow the way of Abraham, upright, monotheistic. He doesn't associate to God. So your whole concept of understanding what religion is flawed. And you guys come back and like, Nuriyah, simple question. Are you sitting on that chair? Yes, you are. Did God show you mercy? 100% after insulting him and after insulting Prophet Muhammad. So when you're saying that God's not showing mercy to everybody, you're completely wrong. You're sitting fine on that chair. That mercy is going to stop on the day of judgment when you're going to start going through your own hell that you build in your mind and how the devil put all these blockages in front of you because of the things that you say. When we're talking about verses of God and we're showing you how, like, you know what, we're actually peaceful with people, unless if they cross us, you're saying, no, you guys cross first. That's not true, and that's not what the Quran says. But your response is blah, blah, blah. That's what you said. Your little words was blah, blah, blah. So when it comes to God's verses and God's way of action and how you're supposed to act, your response is blah, blah, blah. Because as the Quran says, people like you and the people who act like you and say what you say, they become arrogant. They think they know it all. You're talking about interpersonal relationships between people. The only thing that you do is say the opposite when it was what in the Quran said. So you're not honest. And God says, like, if someone says to you peace in the Quran, so if someone says to you peace, don't say to him, oh, we're not going to give you peace because you're not a believer. Like, make sure they're okay and then see what they're about. If they're fighting you, then you don't give them peace. So we're supposed to investigate the person who's giving us peace and give them peace if he deserves it.
We're going to kick it into the open discussion. Want to say our guests are linked in the description, as I mentioned, folks. So, forgive me. David and Nuriyah will have their 8-minute rebuttal. Then we'll go into the open discussion. David and Nuriyah, the rebuttal is all yours.
They almost caught you there, yeah? They almost caught you.
He's falling apart. He's falling apart.
It's a long morning.
Yeah.
All right. As far as not being allowed to take Jews and Christians as friends, I mean, Surah 5, verse 51 is very clear, one of the clearest verses in the Quran. Do not take the Jews and the Christians for friends. They are friends of each other. And so if you want to say Allah means something different there, you got some problems, because again, over and over and over in the Quran, like a beating drum, Allah claims that his commands are perfectly clear. And so if you're going to say, hey, I'm going to be friends with Jews and Christians, even though Allah says, do not take the Jews and the Christians for friends, they are friends of each other, well, that's between you and Allah there. Now, Ahmed quoted Surah 60, verses 8 to 9, to show that Muslims are indeed allowed to be friends with Jews and Christians. And this is a very interesting passage to quote. I'd recommend going to Tafsir Jalalain on this, because the two Jalals note the obvious, namely this was abrogated by later calls to fight and violently subjugate people, which is clear if you read the Quran in context and you understand that one of the basic defining principles of interpreting the Quran is the doctrine of abrogation. Later commands to fight abrogate earlier commands like this. And even if we didn't understand the doctrine of abrogation, imagine what would happen if we go to that surah. It's not very long. Imagine what would happen if we go to that surah and we go back just a few verses earlier. So he's quoting Surah 60, verse 8. Go back just a few verses earlier to an example given to Muslims. Surah 60, verse 4, same chapter, a few verses earlier. Indeed, there is for you a good example in Abraham and those with him when they said to their people, surely we are clear of you and of what you serve besides Allah. We declare ourselves to be clear of you, and enmity and hatred have appeared between us and you forever until you believe in Allah alone. Now notice, the Quran says, take Abraham as an example here. Abraham says, in the Quran, Abraham says to the unbelievers, the non-Muslims, there is enmity and hatred between us and you forever until you believe in Allah alone. Well, that sounds a lot like what Nuriyah and I are saying about what Islam teaches. It actually promotes enmity and hatred. And again, this is the passage that Ahmed went to. This is the passage he went to, and it's promoting, quote, enmity and hatred between Muslims and non-Muslims forever until non-Muslims become Muslims. That's not me. That's Allah himself. And so if this is your go-to passage to show, no, Jews and Christians can be friends, you need to go to a different passage, because notice in Surah 9, which I quoted Surah 9:29 in context, it's talking about Jews and Christians are actually, because of what we say, because Christians say that Jesus is Lord, that we're actually in the polytheist category. We're not true monotheists. Well, what does the chapter that Ahmed quoted say about this: nothing but enmity and hatred between us because of what we believe, hence the command to violently subjugate us and silence us. And remember what was it for? It was because of what we say with our mouths. It was not because of waging war or anything else. It was because of things we say with our mouths. Nothing but enmity and hatred towards us, and the call to violently subjugate us. So thank you, Ahmed, for proving our point here. Nuriyah?
Yeah, thanks, David. Yeah, Ahmed, just to come back to kind of what you were saying earlier again about how, Islam treats people so well wherever they go, blah, blah, blah. And you gave the example specifically of the people of Persia, whether, they were Zoroastrians or fire worshippers. But have you heard of the Parsis, Ahmed? Because they actually fled Muslim persecution to India. That's why the community still exists there. So I think if you were to ask them about how they were treated and tolerated and accepted under Islam, you'd get a completely different picture. So what the Quran or Muhammad has done is actually far less commendable than even Cyrus the Great, who came way before and had a lot more foresight on how to treat minorities and have pluralism. So yeah, I also think that obviously it's not unrealistic to see why this is still happening today. I want to ask Ahmed again, do you not agree that it's Islamists in Afghanistan that are blowing up the Bamiyan Buddhas and every trace of religion that came before Islam? Islam can't tolerate any other culture in existence but its own. You can see that wherever Islam has gone, they have wiped out the native culture and imposed the Arab culture onto them. That's why I say it is an imperialist ideology with an expansionist agenda. There is no treatment for minorities. Look at countries like Pakistan as well. You're not even allowed to hold office because it has the title Islamic Republic in front of it. These are all issues that you guys definitely do need to consider. I would also go as far as to say those Islamists that are blowing up the Bamiyan Buddhas and everything else they consider to be idolatry are just mimicking the behavior of Muhammad when he destroyed the 360 idols in the Kaaba. And then I think it's coming on to Muhammad, your points when you talk about, again, interpersonal values. You Googled it. Thank you so much for us. And you said it's how you deal with other people, verbal, blah, blah, blah. But Muhammad literally said when his own people were concerned that they were killing women and children in their raids, when he was asked about the polytheists, women and children dying, he said they are from them. I can give you the hadith number from that as well. But yeah, it's Sahih Muslim 1745a. And yeah, again, Muhammad, I don't know what you're talking about when dealing with other people. Muhammad himself led at least 29 battles, okay? I know it's embarrassing for you. And I know that your threats of Judgment Day and the devil and waswasa, they don't affect me. But the harsh reality is the reason I'm sitting on this chair is because you're not in power and your religion is not in power. If it was, I wouldn't be sitting on this chair. So again, I'm grateful that here in the West, Islam is subdued. Otherwise, you talk about interpersonal relationships, I'd be gone. Your religion commands my death, and that is something that falls under Sharia, and it would be a thing. So again, I just want to say that even your Muhammad, like you want to threaten me about Judgment Day and me finding out, Muhammad himself wasn't even safe. The guy tried to commit suicide before he was supposedly a prophet on a number of occasions. He had his teeth knocked out during a battle. He was wearing 2 suits of armor, okay, and made the other Muslim guy go in for him. So again, the power of 30 men he has sexually, I wish it was replicated for him in times of battle. And also, I don't know what flavor of Islam or sect of Islam you belong to, but he was poisoned and killed by a Jewish woman. According to some schools of Islamic thought, you do not get to heaven if you were murdered at the hands of a woman or you die at the hands of a woman. So I guess even Muhammad's fate in that sense would be questionable. But yeah, that's what I'd like to say for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And now we'll jump into that open dialogue. Thank you very much. The floor is all yours. David, Nuriyah, Muhammad, and Finding Truth.
See, Nuriyah, you keep doing that same thing. You just take like little verses, small things from like different parts, some of it authentic, some of it not, and then you make up your own story. Prophet Muhammad didn't die because of a Jewish lady poisoning him. Even if he did, that could be the case. There is no story about Muhammad turning his back into battle, because that's definitely against the religion. And just to finalize the point for you, Cyrus the Great however great he was and however good he dealt with minorities, he doesn't have 7 billion people throughout history after him following his ideologies and his methodologies and trying to find like a good value system in life on how to live. Prophet Muhammad has 7 billion subscribers. If it was a person on YouTube, he has 7 billion people following him. So
7 billion. Wow, that's the entire population of the world. So that's
yeah. But throughout history, do you understand? From 1400 now, not everybody stayed living. But maybe that
Okay.
concept's also too hard when you can't hear.
Mohammed, have you heard of the argument ad populum as well? Are you aware of that?
I understand it's about
What are you trying to say
populism,
then?
but you got to look at the other side. I'm not saying the whole world. That's still a small portion of the world because 7 billion doesn't represent the whole population. But it's like almost a third of the whole world following a single man's ideology because he was able to upkeep 7 houses. 7 wives are happy at once. He was a state general. He was a state politician. He was a general in the army. He was taking care of every need that people were coming towards him. People loved him. People went and pursued him for the truth. And they learned on how to deal with each other because of this single man. So this is where you guys like fail. So however big and smart you guys think, like you'll never get to even like a shoe of what that man accomplished.
Okay,
yeah. So,
I would.
oh wait. We wanted to address that, and then
Sure,
we can,
go ahead.
and then Ahmed can continue. So Nuriyah brought up the argument ad populum. So basically, you saying, hey, look at all these people who believe this, therefore it must be true. Very, very strange sort of argument. I mean, communism is believed by lots of people. It's got absolutely nothing, as far as I can tell, with whether something is true. I mean, COVID spread rapidly, has nothing to do with it being part of a true ideology or something like that. If you look at the main reasons for the rapid growth of Islam, it's high birth rates. So it was Islamic expansion, fighting. Muslim fighters fought their way across northern Africa into Europe, and they fought their way east into India and China, and they violently subjugated populations. And apart from that, the main source of growth for the past couple centuries has been high growth rates in Muslim countries. So what you'd basically be saying is Islam conquered a lot of people, and then because of apostasy laws and so on, doesn't allow them to leave. And because of Islam's impact on women, Muslims have the highest birth rates generally. And therefore, this must be true. Whereas this is precisely the sort of thing we might look at and say, actually, there's nothing in here that has anything to do with this being true. But Nuriyah, I'm sure you had some additional thoughts on that. Nope, don't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, thanks, David. Mohammed, I just wanted to say, yeah, correction. I didn't say he turned his back. I said he wore two suits of armor. He literally said to one of his companions there that the best of people are those who jump into battle without armor for the sake of Allah, because he wanted to usurp that person. So this is the great man. But you're right. David and I can never, ever be capable of doing what Muhammad did. And thank goodness for that. We're not capable of genocide. We're not capable of making sex slavery an institution. We're not capable of subjugating half the population. We're not capable of banning adoption, and how Muhammad proved it to us by marrying his adopted son's wife. What a great man. What a great set of interpersonal values, because we really needed to know that, Muhammad. We really needed to know that it's okay to marry your adopted son's wife, and let's just chuck out adoption while that's at it. Yeah. So in favor of Muhammad's lustful eye or whatever was happening there, he got rid of adoption, and we have to live with that for the rest of as long as people like you conform to this ideology and belief system by thinking that because you are having the most babies in the world, that Islam is somehow true. As David said, that's a complete logical fallacy. And the thing is, again, look at Muslim households. When you allow polygamy and you subjugate women and keep them confined to their houses to make them baby-making machines because you're scared of them getting independent, getting an education, being financially astute, to not need you, not be obedient to you, and be in your control, that Islam will collapse. Without women, Islam will die, and you need to keep them in check. That's what it is. A woman in Islam is constantly like a child. She's a glorified child with no rights. So I'd like you to prove me otherwise if you can. I don't know, again, maybe that's not interpersonal enough for you. It's just two people sharing a bed, but sure.
Okay, so I have two comments here actually. So the first one really is about what you guys have just said. I do not expect a Christian and somebody who has left Islam to have high regard to the Prophet or not. And the matter of numbers is not the issue. The issue we are discussing here is whether Quranic values related to interpersonal conduct are good or not. Now, whether you like the Prophet or you like the Muslim nation or you like this or that is irrelevant. The one thing that I am, again, I think is quite relevant, at least in what David was saying, is whether, because this relates to interpersonal conduct, is whether Muslims and people of other religions, specifically in his case, Christians and Jews, can be friends or can have good relations with Muslims or not. Now, David, I'm telling you, yes. Do you want us just to hate you or what, man? Don't hate us that much to the extent you want us to hate you, because we won't.
No, just so you know, Ahmed, some of my best friends of all time. Some of my best friend all through college was a Muslim. I had a friend before that who was an imam. We were weightlifting partners. We used to argue all the time, but we got along. So yeah, no, I agree. I agree. Christians and Muslims can be friends, and that Muslims are, you can always reinterpret what the Quran says. But as I pointed out in my opening, I'm not talking about what individual Muslims believe. I'm talking about what it looks like the Quran says. But yes, yeah. I agree with you. And I have no ill. I've done too many horrible things in my life to say, oh, all these other people are so bad, I can't be friends with them or something like that. So I'm pretty cool with with everyone.
Okay, so now we focus on the point: is a good Muslim okay to be a good friend to a Christian or not? Then let's say that. So if somebody who is a Muslim who wants to commit to Quranic values would accept having good relations not only with Muslims but also with Christians and Jews or not? Let this be the question then. So my claim is yes. And now we have both made comments about Surah Al-Mumtahina, where you have mentioned the matter of Ibrahim. I have actually recently watched one of your debates. I don't remember the other gentleman that you were debating, but he was a Muslim. You mentioned things about abrogation, etc. Now I have a specific opinion about the exacerbant use of abrogation in Islamic scholarship, and there are very different schools about abrogation. But let me specifically, because let's just use this surah, and I will now show you that your methodology, your own methodology, will lead you to accept my position. So let's start the surah from the beginning. I'll take 4 or 5 minutes in that. So the surah starts by يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لَا تَتَّخِذُوا عَدُوِّي وَعَدُوَّكُمْ أَوْلِيَاءَ. It starts by the position that you are talking about. O people who believe, do not take my enemy and your enemy as awliya. And let's even use the word awliya as friends, like you like to translate it. It has so many meanings, but I'll just use the word friends like you like. تُلْقُونَ إِلَيْهِمْ بِالْمَوَدَّةِ. You give them good relationships. وَقَدْ كَفَرُوا بِمَا جَاءَهُم مِّنَ الْحَقِّ. While they have disbelieved on what has come to them of truth. And then now the qualification, David, is the important thing. Why is he blaming them? Because يُخْرِجُونَ الرَّسُولَ وَإِيَّاكُمْ أَن تُؤْمِنُوا بِاللَّهِ رَبَّكُمْ. They are driving you out and the Prophet because you have believed in God your Lord, in Allah your Lord. إِن كُنتُمْ خَرَجْتُمْ جِهَادًا فِي سَبِيلِي وَابْتِغَاءَ مَرْضَاتِي. So I am telling you not to take them as awliya if you have gotten out of your homes to do jihad in my way and seeking my satisfaction. تُسِرُّونَ إِلَيْهِمْ بِالْمَوَدَّةِ وَأَنَا أَعْلَمُ مَا أَخْفَيْتُمْ وَأَعْلَنْتُمْ. You are in secret sending them notions of friendship while while exactly know what you have kept in secret and what you have kept public. وَمَنْ يَفْعَلْهُ مِنْكُمْ فَقَدْ ضَلَّ سَوَاءَ السَّبِيلِ. And he who does this from you, he has gone astray. So the ayah is talking about this. It is in a state of war where Muslims are in a state of war, direct war with the people of Quraysh. And some of the Muslims are afraid that the results of this war will not turn out well. And they are sending secret messages to the people in Mecca or Quraysh to keep good relations on the personal level. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling them, no, you cannot seek good relations for your own benefit. You cannot spy on the Muslim community for your own personal benefit against people who are fighting you. And then he says that if those very people under the state of war find you, and if they meet you, they will be your enemies. And they will send their hands towards you and their tongues with bad deeds. And they would like you to disbelieve. So it is, the whole picture is in the state of war. And then he says, remember Abraham, David, who you know very well from your holy book, that he was living in the time of Namrud, a very bad, oppressive king. And he in our tradition, threw Abraham in the fire. Okay, and so he's telling them, when this was an oppressive king who was so bad to those people who believed, including Abraham himself, Abraham did not go and do friendship with him. He was clear about it. But then my ayat come. And before my ayat come, he says, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِيهِمْ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ لِمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو اللَّهَ وَالْيَوْمَ الْآخِرِ, is reminding him of Ibrahim. And then he says this. Now watch what he's saying. He says, عَسَى اللَّهُ أَن يَجْعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ وَبَيْنَ الَّذِينَ عَادَيْتُمْ مِنْهُمْ مَوَدَّةً. It is hopeful that God will create good relations. Mawadda is actually affection. Mawadda and good relations and affection between you and those whom you have become enemies. Okay? Wallahu ghafurur rahim. Wallahu qadirul. God is all powerful and he is merciful and forgiving. And then he says the two ayat that I have told you. لا ينهاكم الله عن الذين. So he becomes now specific. Now you are in a state of war with people of Quraysh, but in general, you have no problem to have good friendships with other peoples who are not in a state of combating and military action against you. And he says the next ayah, if in your methodology, where you will take the later ayah as abrogating the previous one, then your whole argument goes away. If in my methodology, where I will put every ayah in its specific context, so there is the bigger context of a conflict on the community or the nation level. And there is the context of a person making a good relation with another person. These are two different contexts. So the beginning of the ayah says, when there is a conflict between your nation and another nation, do not go and have a relation with somebody who you know is at a very, very negative position towards your nation and make friends with him for your personal interest. This is very common. And in your country and my country and every country of the world, this will be considered espionage if you are selling out your country for your personal interest. And then he gives an example of Abraham. And then he tells you, setting that aside, if somebody is not a direct combatant for you, or other community is not in combat with you, or a specific person who is your neighbor is not holding a combatant position or an offensive situation versus you personally or your religion, then there is no problem to be his friend. But even in the Quran, he says, hopefully you will become friends. According to your methodology, you should not have any issue with this surah or this chapter or those ayat altogether.
Not my methodology at all. As far as what you're saying, if we were in an Islamic context of when this is supposedly being revealed to Muhammad, and you said, "Hey, this is not forbidding you from being friends with Jews and Christians," I would say you're right. I would say you're right. As far as this chapter goes, that is what it sounds. So I'm not saying, hey, this verse right here abrogates that one, abrogates that one, abrogates that one that comes before it. The only issue I would have about this chapter, as far as what you're saying, is when it talks about Abraham, and he says, "Surely we are clear of you and of what you serve besides Allah. We declare ourselves to be clear of you, and enmity and hatred have appeared between us and you forever until you believe in Allah alone." Notice that's not until you stop bothering us, or until you stop being bad, or until you stop doing all these horrible things. There's enmity and hatred between us until you believe in Allah alone. So that's one issue, because that's what's being given as an example. Apart from that, I would agree with your interpretation of the surah. The difficulty is that command is not. It's not that it's abrogated by another verse in the surah, that it's abrogated by later commands to fight. And again, that's not D. Wood's opinion, you go to Tafsir Jalalain. It says this was revealed before the command to fight them. As far as abrogation, the historical background of the verses on abrogation. I'll go ahead and finish with this because I know Muhammad has something he wants to add. But the typical verses on abrogation: Surah 16, verse 101, Surah 2, verse 106. I'll read the historical background here in Al-Wahidi. So the historical background for Surah 16, verse 101 says, this verse was revealed when the idolaters said, Muhammad is mocking his companions. One day he commands them to do something, and the next day he forbids them from doing something, or brings instead something which is easier. He is nothing but a forger who says things of his own invention. And the historical background on 2:106 says, then Allah mentions what was abrogated of the Quran and that which was not abrogated as a direct reference to the claim of the Quraysh who said to the Prophet, O Muhammad, why do you command us to do something and then forbid it? And Allah reveals whatever communications we abrogate or cause to be forgotten, we bring one better than it or like it. So the historical background is unbelievers, pagans, polytheists, kept noticing, wait a minute, Muhammad commands one thing, and then later on he commands something else and says that this abrogated or canceled the earlier revelation. And they say, well, what's going on here? It looks like Muhammad's just messing with everybody. And then Allah's response is, oh, yeah, of course I abrogate stuff. I command stuff, one time that abrogates or cancels earlier revelations. And so the underlying principle is when two commands are telling you to do different things, it really looks like one abrogates or cancels the other. That's the position of the Quran. And so when we look at the last major surah, the last large surah revealed, Surah 9, and we read, fight those who do not believe in Allah, and we read the historical context, we read the literary context, and we see this is commanding to violently subjugate Jews and Christians because of our beliefs, because of what we say with our mouths, because we say things like Jesus is Lord, and there are calls for violence against us. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to say, but in Surah 60, verse 8, this earlier command, it didn't say that, and therefore it must mean that we can all be friends and get along, especially when Surah 5, verse 51 was also revealed. So Surah 5, verse 51, for those who missed it earlier, do not take the Jews and Christians for friends. So don't take the Jews and Christians for friends. They are friends of each other. Fight those who do not believe in Allah. I went ahead and read that in context. We could go to the historical context if you want, but to just say, this verse that was revealed much earlier in the context of a book that gives the doctrine of abrogation as a defining principle of how to interpret it, doesn't seem like a powerful or persuasive response to me.
I will just say a small comment before we go to Muhammad. I don't have a problem to go through the matter of war and peace between Muslims and people of the book specifically with you, because I have seen other debates that you had about this topic, and I think that those debates did not do fairness to the topic. Even the verses that you are talking about in Surah Al-Ma'idah and Surah Al-Anfal, I can show you exactly in the same way that I showed you how Surah Al-Mumtahina, and you agreed, does not lead to what you were saying. I can show you in the other ones that they do not lead to what you are saying. This is surahs and verses about international relations and relations that relate to the state of war. They do not relate to interpersonal conduct, and they even do not have this generic sense that you are talking about. I can prove it to you beyond reasonable doubt. It is a big topic. It cannot be finished now. It is a big topic. The final comment is that the story of... Yeah, go ahead.
No, I just want to... this is not me responding to anything. It's just... Sure. I am interested in that topic. So if sometime in the future you wanted to have a specific discussion, like just about that passage in... matter of fact, doesn't even have to be a debate. You could come with me on my channel. We could just have a discussion, and you could tell me your thoughts on that. I'd be happy to hear it.
I'll be happy to do that. So if James can share both our emails after this, I'll be happy to do that with you. The final thing is that, of course, like in your book and in my book, the story of Abraham is mentioned in many places in the Quran. So when the Quran in Surah Al-Mumtahina makes a reference to the story of Abraham, it doesn't need to say the story from the beginning, because the context where Abraham was, the persecution, and throwing him in the fire and driving him out of the land of Canaan altogether was similar to the situation of Muslims at that time who were driven out of Mecca by the Quraysh. So again, the Quran has to be read in whole and has to be in the specific order and context. So this is, I just don't want to take over all of Muhammad's time. Since we agreed we can take this in further elaboration, I'm happy to do that at your convenience.
David Wood, so you're translating the word awliya, wali, as friends, right? So that's like the simplest way. But
I'm not. Muslim translators are, but I know you could point out additional meanings to it. But go ahead.
It's not about pointing out. Yes, there is the translation of friends. It can come as the term as friends, but that's actually like almost like a loose translation because it's more so of a protector. Wali. It comes from the word wali, which is someone who's like a step higher of you. So you can't be friends with somebody, but then putting them as a protector, that's the issue. It's like you yourself are saying like, oh, they have a problem with what we believe. Well, God didn't tell you to believe what you believe. You saying the excess about God, that Jesus is the Son of God or that Jesus is Lord, that's an excess. That's like too much. You know, that's not stuff that you were told to believe. So for us, it's insulting. It's insulting to God that you're saying that. But with that said, right, God is always saying to us like when people are explaining things about God, we say exalted is God, and we let you be. Like we will warn you, like be careful, because like you can't get to heaven when you're saying that kind of stuff. On the day of judgment, God's going to ask you, "Where's my son?" And you're going to try to point to Jesus, but Jesus is not there, and then you're going to feel ridiculed. And those are the things that we're trying to scare you with, is that the fact that you're going to be held accountable to what you're saying. But it's not the animosity and the hate that you're talking about. It actually comes from the other side. It's the fact that we disassociated from you, just like how Abraham said, like we're disassociating from you and we don't believe what you're saying. We don't like what you're saying. It doesn't make sense to us. Because we're disassociating and cutting a different path, the baghda and the hate comes from the other side. Muslims don't make a whole like mass media to try to hate on the United States and play with people's head and make intelligence services to go ruin other countries. That's happening to Islam because Islam is the one that's in the position of defense. The hate is coming from the outside. But it seems like we're the ones to you that we're perpetuating the hate because we have to retaliate. But if you're controlling the mass media and you're the one who's causing these campaigns against us, then obviously whatever we retaliate is going to look like a bad light to you. But to go back to the topic, like what Ahmed's saying, like on a personal level, when we're dealing with each other, a lot of stuff that you guys are saying, like you're always going to the most extremist interpretation of these verses, and from people that are not educated, from people that lack the growth that can help them understand these verses better. And God loves those in muhsineen, those who are righteous. Like if I, as like Nuriyah said, like me force myself on my wife, that's not righteous. God said, we created your wife so that like we created from man his wife so that he could live for her. لِيَسْكَنُوا إِلَيْهَا. And then we also have to like ashiruhum bil ma'ruf. So I have to like treat her with favor and fairness. She's my partner. She's not my kid, as you're saying. So I don't know. A lot of stuff that you guys are putting is what the extremists and the enemies of the religion are saying. And you guys take things out of context. Like the whole point of Jewish, Christian, and Muslim religion is to make the world a better place. But there is a war. Yes, there is a war. We have an enemy till the day of judgment. That enemy is the devil. He's the one who's making you feel like there's a difference or that you're mistreated and that you need to retaliate or those people are wrong. That's the enemy. It's not us between each other. It's these thoughts that people have. But Islam clears that all up. There isn't a problem that you're going through in your life that the Quran doesn't have a verse about.
I wanted to hand this over to Nuriyah. I just had one quick comment here. So there are reasons. There are lots of translators who translate awliya as friends. But I'm going to go. I'll show you why very quickly. You said you could translate it as protectors. And you said that a wali is something higher. It's something a step higher. So your awliya are something above you. But surah, so everyone is following. So Surah 5 verse 51 says, do not take the Jews and Christians as awliya, which some translators translate as friends. And Muhammad is saying, no, it's actually something higher. like a protector over you, guardian or something like that, but it's a step higher than you. Problem. Surah 10, verse 62. Lo, verily, the friends of Allah are those on whom fear cometh not, nor do they grieve. This refers to the awliya of Allah. So this is translated friends of Allah, awliya of Allah. But according to Muhammad here, awliya is your protector and is a step above you. So this should actually be verily the protectors of Allah who are a step above him. On them there is no fear, nor do they grieve.
No,
and so there are
it's protected by Jews. Like it's the same mentality. I don't understand why you're seeing it. To you, it's true.
No. You said awliya is protector, and your words. This means something a step. And this means Let me just finish. This means something a step higher. So if we translate Surah 10, verse 62, which refers to the friends of Allah, well, that's the awliya of Allah. If that means these are Allah's protectors and they're a step above him, they're a step higher, then there are beings who are protectors of Allah and they're a step higher than he is. And my friend Muhammad just committed all kinds of shirk. But Nuriyah, did you have any thoughts on the rest of what Muhammad said? And you can respond to that.
Can we just close this thing? Because I saw you actually even debate this same word with people before. And I was really surprised that none of them actually has given you the right answer. It was really surprising to me. So let me just close this because, and maybe we can expand on that on our later thing. So the word wali and awliya, it's the plural, and the word mawla, which refers to an individual person. So I say, I am Mawla David, or David is Mawla Ahmed, okay? The word mawla is one of those Arabic words that can actually mean one thing and is exact opposite. Okay, so the word, if you say, for example, Frank and I don't know George. So if you say that Frank is mawla George, it can mean that George is the slave of Frank, or that Frank is the slave of George. And the only way that you will know which is which is by checking the context. So this word specifically, you have to be very careful with it. And this is why you will find statements in the Quran that you will find people, awliyaullah. You can, if you use the word friend, you will not have the issue. But sometimes the word friend will not actually work. So awliyaullah in this case can be seen at, now the nice thing about the word, it can be seen that awliyaullah are the ones who protect Allah's religion, or are the ones that are being protected by Allah. Okay, actually, if you want to check the formal Arabic and make sure that what I am telling you, I'm somebody who has studied Arabic for quite a long time, and I studied Islam academically for 4 years, so I actually know what I'm talking about. And I'm surprised that none of those you have talked about has explained this about this word. And the reason this word has this property, it is that in many sentences, both meanings are needed. I just want to put this on the table, and maybe we can expand on it later.
Nuriyah, anything?
Yeah, thanks. So I just do want to, minus the elephant in the room, I want to say to Mohammed and Ahmed that, just by virtue of you two having this conversation today, you are already better than Islam, in my opinion. Mohammed, the fact that, you want to talk about Judgment Day and things like that, that's okay to me. As long as you don't want to end my life in the here and now, as Islam tells you to do, you are better than Islam. And it's the same thing for Ahmed, the fact that you want to befriend Christians and Jews, even if, I don't want to go into the whole abrogation thing. I think you and David have handled that pretty well. But in general, again, you are better than Islam. And I think let's go back to the bare bones of the topic, interpersonal values or conduct, right? So the starting point of that would be, currently we are having this conversation because I'm sitting comfortably in the West, as are you guys. Could we have this conversation in an Islamic state? Yes or no? The fact is, there is no way we could have this conversation in an Islamic state. So that's how you treat your own people. I was born into a religion that I had no choice about. I was born into it, but the penalty for leaving is death. So there is no way out. So for me, it's like, how does Islam treat its very own people? How does Islam treat people who are questioning? How does Islam treat apostates like myself? I believe the word for it is irtidat in Arabic, which is akin to treason. And that's why I'm saying again that this religion is more of a political ideology that considers somebody leaving the fold as having committed treason. But again, for me, something that allows you to come in so easily and glorifies white reverts, so to speak, has no way out for its own adherents that had no choice in the matter. It seems like a cult. And yeah, so Ahmed, I wanted to say to you that, you know, you talk about that friendship could be reached, and that's the aim, is to foster this friendship. But I wanted to ask you, how long will that last, and how long is it supposed to last? Because according to your scripture, the last hour will not be established until you fight the Jews. So much so that I don't know, like stones will come to life and speak and tell you where Jews are hiding, and it will tell Muslims how to kill them. Muhammad's looking very confused, but this is Sahih Bukhari. I'll read it to you as well.
No. You said our scripture, but that's not in the Quran. You're talking about what the Prophet Muhammad said, that certain events are going to occur, but we're talking about the Quran here.
Yeah, I know, but I was just adding a supplementary bit that your hadith is saying on the last days, you're going to have to fight the Jews. So how long will this supposed friendship last? Because if you want to summon the end times, which you do, right? How are you going to go about that?
But it's not us summoning the end times. And I'm sorry, I was born into a conflict where the Zionist Jews are destroying my brothers. So yes, it seems like that prophecy is slowly happening to a sense where hopefully, you know, our community can come back to its roots, and we can, you know, as brothers, take care of the oppression. But it's not how you're like painting it out that we're warlords and we're gonna go.
But
no,
Muhammad, nothing is according to you, right? Like you said something earlier about like, oh, it's insulting that me and David are presenting information like this. But I would argue it's insulting to me and it's insulting to David when you are clearly glossing over hadith that says, do not greet the Jews and Christians before they greet you. And when any of them on the roads force him to go to the narrowest part of it, right? Then right.
But you see, the thing is, like you were talking about the part about like forcing them to the narrowest part. That's things that are not what we're discussing in the topic. But when it comes to the greetings, yes, I'm going to wait for the person to give me peace. Most of the world is not accepting of those who believe. The believers, I mean, like in society, the world is against believers. And
but Jews are believers in their own right. What are you talking about?
You see, the Jews were considered believers when Moses was around. After the Torah came down and after Moses
passed away. Yeah, but just because you don't consider them believers does not mean that they are not believers.
You see, they have elements of belief, but the fact that is they went and started to make up things after Moses. That's why they're Jews. They were called Muslims when Moses was around. They were believers.
No, they weren't. That's a belief that you guys have. They were not called
Muslims. Would you like
they
the
were never
Quran?
called Muslims.
But you see, this is the problem with you. It's not, Muslim is not like a label. Like it has a definition. It means
it's the fitrat. It's the natural disposition. No, it's not. Again, that's just a belief you have.
It's not a belief. It's the fact that you're failing translating the word. So like David likes to say Allah, or you have to believe in Allah. Allah means
So are you saying David was born a Muslim and he's just transgressed?
Everything in life, everything around you in the skies and the land is a Muslim. Everything is submitted to God.
This pen is a Muslim?
Yes. But here's the proof. You're laughing. Here's the proof. Finally in the Quran, when God goes, Ya ayyuhal muslimun, all Muslims, he says, all believers. You have to believe that you've submitted to the will of God. That's the religion that we are. Yes.
That's what I'm saying. Believe. It's belief. It's not based in any fact. It's your belief.
But you believe in the truth. I mean, it's still like you're supposed to believe in the fact.
How can it be the truth if it's your belief? Anyway, we digress. Did anyone want to come in?
I believe you're sitting in a chair.
So
because I have the evidence and proof. So I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, there's evidence. There's God. There's evidence that this book is guiding me to the best kind of conduct because people like how I treat them. Not in debates like this because the other side is just sometimes, saying things that are not honest. But for my day-to-day life, people appreciate how I act. People appreciate how we talk. People appreciate what we stand for. So this is the essence of the Quran.
You can't say sweeping statements like there's evidence for God. But anyway, that's to me. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry. Ahmed.
So I think, Nuriyah, you have asked an important question, which is if this affection or good relations that I would like to see, or that I say that the Quran wants to be the case between Muslims and Christians, for example, are they destined to last? And there is one topic that I would actually like, if we start this other conversation, David, then what is, in the eyes of Islam, the strategic relation between Muslims and Christians. And the strategic, I'm talking Christians specifically now because David is here. If there was a Jew here, I would have talked about that concerning Jews. But the strategic relation between Muslims and Christians, according to the Islam, is one of alliance. It is completely to the contrary of what you have said. And the evidence from that, from Surah Al-Ma'idah, is that Surah Al-Ma'idah depicts a picture in the future, because even Nuriyah has mentioned end times. Now, for your context, and it says like this, it's, وَلَتَجِدَنَّ أَقْرَبَهُمْ مَوَدَّةً لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا الَّذِينَ قَالُوا إِنَّا نَصَارَى ذلك بأن منهم قسيسين ورهبانا وأنهم لا يستكبرون. This is verse 82 of Surah Al-Ma'idah. Okay? Surah 5. I don't like calling surahs with their numbers, so it's Surah Al-Ma'idah. So it starts by discussing some things about people of the book and about the Israelite people, Bani Israel specifically, and then it goes into a futuristic view of how it is going to be at the end. And the translation of what I have said.
Would you like to quote it? Are you going to quote it for us?
Yeah, it's Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse 82.
Yeah, no, are you going to quote it for us?
Yeah,
yeah.
So, and it says, and so surely you are going to find those who are closest to, closest in affection to the believers, and here he is referring to Muslims, الَّذِينَ قَالُوا إِنَّا نَصَارَى, those who say we are Christians.
No, I mean, are you gonna quote the full verse, because you're going right to the
sure.
Right to
so it starts by talking about Bani Israel at the beginning of few ayahs before that, and it says why Bani Israel are not favored by God anymore, because they have left al-amr bil ma'ruf and nahy anil munkar. They are not anymore pushing the good deeds, and they are treating people differently. Actually, the same criticism that you are saying is applicable to Muslims is not in the Quranic view, and is the reason that previous people of the book were disfavored by God. And for example,
I was just wondering if you could quote the entire verse for us in English.
And then he says, لَتَجِدَنَّ أَشَدَّ النَّاسِ عَدَاوَةً لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا الْيَهُودَ وَالَّذِينَ أَشْرَكُوا وَلَتَجِدَنَّ أَقْرَبَهُم مَوَدَّةً لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا الَّذِينَ قَالُوا إِنَّا نَصَارَى. You will surely find, and this is probably a futuristic view, that there is going to be an alliance between Jews and mushrikeen is people who take partners to Allah, or people who take partners to Allah. No, so some would say that this might actually relate to the time of Prophet Muhammad, because there was an alliance between Jews in Medina and the mushrikun of Quraysh, specifically in Ghazwat al-Ahzab, when the Medina was completely encircled, and then the Jews inside Medina actually were going to let the pagans of Quraysh in. But I think this is looking futuristic. It is saying that at a point of time, the world will have an alliance between people who completely disbelieve in Allah.
Ahmed, I apologize. The word is not alliance. The word is not alliance.
Yeah. So it says there will be animosity between الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, those who believe from one side, and Jews and those who are not believing or taking partners to Allah from another side. But in the same time, people who say we are Christians will be in a state of love and affection, or a state of affection and good relations with Muslims. So the strategic relation between people who identify as Christians and Muslims is one of affection and good relationship. So what I'm telling you as David Wood, why do you not want that to be the case? Now, people who are Jews and people who are disbelieving in God, who are not part of this front that is against Muslims and who wants to drive Muslims from their homes or to be bad to them, are not related to this. So if somebody is a Jew and he's a fair Jew and he has no problem with a Christian or a Muslim, Muslims will then fall under the ayat of having good relations with him. But if somebody, and the same goes to somebody who is a Christian, and the same goes to somebody who is a complete disbeliever. If you are an enemy of somebody, then this somebody will not be happy with having a relation with you. So this ayah, in the strategic sense, says that Muslims from one side, believing Muslims from one side, and Christians like yourself, who identify as a Christian, you are coming to this debate for Christianity. You are somebody who cares about Christianity. This is at least what I understand about you. So people who identify as Christian, who care about the religious way of life a Christian should lead, and people who believe in Allah according to the religion of Islam, the strategic direction according to Islam is that we should not be enemies.
I do want to.
So I just want, this is an answering to what Nuriyah asks. Should this affection or love be completely short-lived or not? No, it shouldn't.
I want to give
In the personal level, it should always be good relations unless there is animosity. And on the strategic level, Muslims and Christians and any person, and even Hindus and Jews who want to live according to the religious way of life in righteousness and in good relations should not have any problem on the interpersonal level with Muslims, and on the community level, Muslims and Christians should actually defend the religious way of life.
I want to give David and Nuriyah a chance to respond. And then someone also mentioned, we've talked a lot about you could say, Abrahamic religions. They said they also want to hear about kind of the relationship with Muslims or Islam with Hindus and Buddhists and atheists. But I want to give David and Nuriyah a chance to respond to that last point first, if you have a response.
Yeah, I'll just give my quick understanding of that verse. So the verse that Ahmed brought up, verily you will find, so this is Surah 5 verse 82, verily you will find the strongest among men in enmity to the believers, so the strongest in hostility towards the believers, to be the Jews and those who are al-mushrikun, so associators. And you will find the nearest in love to the believers, those who say, we are Christians. That is because amongst them are priests and monks, and they are not proud. So my understanding, so one, I see significant problems already. It's just this blanket statement that Jews are the greatest in enmity to Muslims. But as far as what I mentioned in my opening statement, that the Quranic revelations seem to have a lot to do with Muhammad's mood and feelings. When you look at this in the grand scheme of the Quranic revelations, when Muhammad begins receiving revelations in Mecca, the revelations during that time really seem like, hey, it's us Muslims and Jews and Christians, and we're together against the polytheists because we're the monotheist here, and it's us versus them. Later, Muhammad goes to Medina, and the Jews reject him, and that's when we get this. Hey, it's Jews and polytheists on one side, and Muslims and Christians on the other side. Then the Christians reject him as a prophet as well. And then what do we get after that? Fight those who do not believe in Allah. And it's specifically that passage, which I read in context, Surah 9, verse 29, fight those who do not believe in Allah, specifically referring to Jews and Christians. The justification for fighting us was our beliefs as Christians. Now, it wasn't that our behavior had changed. It was our beliefs, our justification for fighting us. Well, how does that change since Surah 5? What changed? Well, what changed was that Christians rejected Muhammad since then. And so I'm looking at it in that context, and it seems to be based on Muhammad's mood and Muhammad's feelings. But the final marching orders of the Quran, if you read the Quran from beginning to end and you understand how abrogation works and you understand how it all ties together, is not Surah 5 verse 82, oh, the Jews are strongest in enmity like the polytheists, but Christians are friends. The final marching orders of the Quran are fight those who do not believe in Allah, and the command is to fight Christians because, again, what we say with our mouths, we say Jesus is Lord, and that's why we have to be violently subjugated. And so this is another situation where I don't think going to an earlier revelation, pulling something out of it, and then using that to overthrow the final commands of Allah is a good approach. But as you've pointed out, Ahmed, we can always discuss Surah 9 in more detail.
David, just a quick question in regards to that verse when God is saying that those who are Jews, right? You're gonna find them as like the most they have the most animosities towards believers. So you gotta look at the Quran as a rule book, a law. So if you're a Jew and there's a set of believers that came after you, they're gonna try to fight you. Now, quick question: when Jesus was alive, and the people who believed in Jesus, who are called the believers at the time, right? What did Jews do to Jesus and his group? And what did they do around them? And what did they try to do to Jesus? So you could see that the verse is clearly true, that the Jews show a lot of animosity towards any believers that came after them, right? And yes, the fact that there is a lot of mercy and there's a lot of forgiveness that is preached in Christianity is the reason why Muslims and Christians get along so well, because we're so good to forgive. So yeah, you're proving the verse correct. The people who tried to kill Jesus were the Jews.
Now, I want to make some more comments about Nuriyah, if you'd like. So Nuriyah, some of your statements were, in my opinion, outside of the scope of this, but I'm glad to discuss them with you if you'd like. Some relate to the law, some relate to apostasy, etc.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Ahmed, can I just come
maybe
in real
later.
quick before on your point about I really appreciate you trying to like find loopholes for Christianity, right? And what you're trying to explain to David. I do appreciate that. But can you honestly say you could extend the same loopholes to Jews and Hindus, especially polytheists? Would you be able to find kind of the same?
Yeah, so I will tell you this. There is no issue. I am talking to David as a Christian, but I have actually, even on my channel, I have had people who associate one way or another with Judeo-Christianity. And I can tell you this. Muslims never had an issue with Jews because they are Jews. Once the Prophet arrived to Medina, he created this covenant with the Jews, and Muslims and Jews in Medina lived in a normal way until war became the status quo. Now, Jews later, let's look at what happened to Jews in the Islamic world. So when Jews were persecuted in Europe, Jews in the world were concentrated in two places, in Baghdad in the east, and in Andalusia in the west. And when Muslims were driven out of Andalusia, which is Iberia or Spain and Portugal today, Jews left Iberia with the Muslims because they were getting persecuted by the Qashtalians, by the Crusaders at that time. So it has been historically proven that Cairo, Baghdad, and Andalusia were the places where Jews lived the best life on the face of the earth, actually. It says something about how Islam wants to treat Jews and Christians and people of any other religion. Hindus, when Muslims dealt with Hindus, in my opinion, for example, Brahman is another name for Allah. This is in my opinion. I think that there is an issue because Muslims in the eastern part of the world typically deal with Christians, that the real relation between Islam and Hinduism is not known, but there has been 800 years of Muslims and Hindus in the subcontinent of India living. There is so much to be said about Islam and Hinduism. Now, Hinduism has polytheistic issues, plenty of them. Okay, but maybe I can say the same thing about Trinity in Christianity, for example. The matter that 3 gods versus 100 million or 300 million gods doesn't make really a difference. But the point is, do Hindus worship a creator for this universe or not? Yes, they do. And he is called Brahman. And the features and characteristics of Brahman, apart from they setting partners to him, are in the Vedic tradition pretty consistent with what Allah describes himself to be. Muslims believe that every community on the face of the earth has received revelation and that people with time have corrupted them. And this is the reason, for example, why when Muslims went to Persia, they considered people who are, I hate this word, Majus in Arabic, followers of Zoroastrian. I have a problem with pronouncing this guy's name. Okay, so the Zoroastrians. Okay, Majus or Magis. They consider them dhimmis. They consider them as good in the treatment of the country to them as Christians and Jews. So now,
Ahmed, won't you say these are all pejorative terms anyway? Right? These are discriminatory, pejorative terms. Whether it's dhimmi, whether it's the term that you just used, whether it's
they are not. No, they're not. I'll tell you why they are not. So if you are, for example, let's say you are living in the UK, Okay. Now, there would be somebody who is tagged as a UK national. He's a citizen of the UK or of Germany or whatever, and somebody who is an alien or a non-citizen. Okay. So tagging somebody with a name that signifies his status is not a problem. Now, when you associate that name with a negative association, this now becomes the problem. The word dhimmi,
sorry, a national has status and rights, an alien has nothing.
Yeah. So, but both are human
so it
beings.
Is. But there's a hierarchical. But there's a hierarchical discrimination, right?
Absolutely. But this hierarchical discrimination happens in the UK and the US as good as any other place of the world. Somebody somebody has your passport inside the country. So if I am an American, I have an American passport inside America, I have more freedoms and more rights than somebody who does not have an American passport. If I don't have an American passport and my visa expired, I am kicked out. If I have an American passport, I can stay. So my civil freedoms and liberties and everything else. Yeah.
Why is a religion assuming state-like responsibility?
I'm sorry?
Because that's what religion means.
Why is a religion?
Okay. So let me complete this thing. So the word dhimmi itself means somebody who has the dhimma of the Muslimun. The dhimma of the Muslimun, that it means that it is part of the honor of the Muslimun to protect him. And why is this the case? It is actually a term with a positive connotation, actually, not a negative one. Because typically when people of another nation or another culture come to take the country of somebody else, then the original people of this country are really in a very inferior state. They have no rights whatsoever. What dhimmi means is that in the hadith of the Rasul, فَإِنَّ لَهُمْ ذِمَّةً. When he was talking about Egyptians, for example, لَهُمْ قَرَابَةً وَذِمَّةً. They are related because because Hajar, the wife of Abraham, was Egyptian. So there is qaraba, they are kin, and they have dhimma because they are Christians. Egyptians were Christians at that time. And when they are dhimma and Muslims goes there, he was talking about when Muslims go to Egypt. So take care of the Christians of Egypt because they have kin and they have dhimma. We are supposed to protect them. Okay, so the word dhimma on its own has a positive connotation. Now, in the last 100 years or 150 years, that people who have the original language, their mother tongue, English, they do not understand or appreciate what the word dhimma means, is actually doing injustice to the word. Okay, now I wanted to refer to your very first question, which was...
Can I just speak to that for a second?
Sure.
Thank you. Just a question though, just two things, because I get your point about Hinduism and the Jewish adherence, but I just, in the living example of the Prophet, like we hear obviously in the Hadith where he was literally riding to the Jews, and he says that most of the time the Jews say Salam Alayka, right, which is death be upon you, and he responds by saying you should say and to you back. And then I just want to know, like, the whole massacre of Banu Qurayza, what do you have to say about that and interpersonal values in terms of the treatment of Jewish people and their women and children being sold off into slavery?
Well, okay, it is a little bit outside of anything interpersonal because this was a state of war. But if you go to the historical context...
But war is between people, Ahmed, and it becomes interpersonal. This is a religion that doesn't differentiate.
War goes to politics and goes to the state level, Nuriyah. And what was the situation on the ground that time?
Yeah. Yes, but this book blurs the lines, right? It blurs the lines between war and suddenly you've got sex captives on your hands, and therefore all lines of interpersonal relationships have therefore been blurred. So on that basis, we can proceed.
So the lines there are, this is a state of war. The Muslim community at its entirety was completely encircled by the Quraysh pagan army that has collected from every corner of the Arab Peninsula. And there was a coalition, there was a signed treaty between the Muslims and Bani Qurayza. And Bani Qurayza had the backs of the Muslims. So Medina was a very fortified place. It had very rough terrain from two sides. And there was the ditch that the Muslims actually cut out from the ground from one side. And from the fourth side, the back of the Muslims, Bani Qurayza had their own forts and homes. And Bani Qurayza vowed not to let the Mushrikun in. And what happened is that Bani Qurayza made a secret treaty with the Mushrikun after they could not go over the ditch, that they will let them in. And there was nobody in Medina but Muslim women and children. And Bani Qurayza actually went and checked if there was any combatants inside Medina or not. And what would have transpired is that if they had realized that every other Muslim was at the side of the ditch, Quraysh would have entered from the back and slaughtered every single soul in Medina, and then went to the combatants and slaughtered them from the back. So actually what happened is that Banu Qurayza, specifically, not Jews in general, where they actually accepted arbitration. They chose their arbiter, and they chose somebody from the Muslims who used to be a historical ally to them. And he is the one who actually gave the judgment that they should suffer the punishment of high treason, which was death. They accepted arbitration. And this is history. So you can actually go back to history and find that. And those of Bani Qurayza who were at that point, who said, no, we do not accept the decision of our leaders, and we are not going to commit high treason against the Muslims with which we have a signed treaty, were pardoned by the Prophet. This guy had this position, this guy had this position, that other guy had this position, and they were pardoned. And only people at the age of combat were punished. This was a situation where Islam could have been completely eradicated from the face of the earth. And I don't think that if this was any, whether secular or religious group, that the punishment would have been different. Actually, Banu Qurayza had the opportunity to fight. They were encircled after the Muslims, after the Quraysh went away and their allies, and they are the ones who accepted arbitration. And they knew that whatever arbitration commands was going to be executed. So anyway, this is also, again, a matter of international relations or state relations, not very related to interpersonal.
I'll give you a chance to respond, either David or Nuriyah, and then we got to go into the Q, or we have to go into the closing statements and then the Q&A.
Okay. Yeah, sure. No, Ahmed, exactly what you were saying about the Jews as well, though, and it's outside of the scope. Again, I feel like the scope is a very weird, narrow framework that we're working with, okay? And I feel like it was done to kind of throw us a curveball on purpose. What do we talk about?
Though I responded anyway.
No, yeah. No, I understand. But as you were saying, we have moved very, very much forward in society now. Like we've got the Mandela prison rules. We've got rules for how you treat prisoners of war. So yes, checking the pubic hair of boys, whether they should be killed or not, according to the age of combatants that you said, is something that, wherever there is law and order, it would not happen today. And where we do see crazy things like this happening, it's usually at the hands of an Islamist inspired group like Boko Haram or, the likes of ISIS when they still kidnap Yazidi girls. So this is all still happening, but it's good as a society that we have moved past this. The fact that you were mentioning these as if, arbitration helped, or the fact that there was, they agreed to it, or only guys that are above a certain age were killed, is not doing any favors to the Islamic cause, because this is meant to be a timeless, eternal guideline. Muhammad's example, the fact that Muhammad had a hand to play in this, these were his commandments, that just negates the fact that he's a timeless example that all human beings should emanate. He would be tried today in courts for war crimes against humanity on the basis of this story that you're recalling. And again, we see this, even if you don't want to just rely on the way that the Quran, as David mentioned earlier, back and forth, talks about the Christians and the Jews, let alone polytheists. I don't know how you're making concessions for that when the biggest sin in Islam you could possibly do is shirk, associating partners with Allah. And that's typically what polytheists do. So they are considered the scum of the earth, according to the Quran. The Quran is filled with hate speech to all minorities. And we see this representative in Islamic countries when minorities have none to little rights. Name me one Muslim country, like I said before, that helps and accepts minorities. The only reason Islam is pacified in the West is because it is subdued. When it changes, everything will change. And Sharia, the law that is derived from the Quran, is testament to this. But yeah, that's what I'd say. David, did you want to add?
Actually, I just want to answer something you said really quick about people being trialed in high courts for crimes against humanity because of the system that you like to defend, which sounds like it's the Western system. So where's the crimes against the political leaders and the state leaders and generals that went through the Middle East and caused all this corruption and torture in Iraqi prison systems and the torture of children that had nothing to do with the politics? The high courts didn't do much there, nor did they target the right people.
Mohammed, just
Aside
before
from that,
we
I'll
waste...
give you an example. And I'll give you an example
but before
of
we
someone
waste
living
time,
in Egypt.
we don't have to waste time on this. It's purely whataboutism. I'm not against
It's
them
not
being
what about
tried.
it.
It is, though.
It's about you presenting something that is not reality.
No, but
what you're saying is not reality in this day and age.
Listen. Let me respond. Those men that you're talking about, those politicians you're talking about, do not claim to be the last messenger of God and to be followed for all time. They are fallible human beings, and we can call them out for their behavior. I will call out the next Western politician any day. I don't have a dog in this fight. But Muhammad, by no stretch of the imagination, is even on par of being somebody that we should emanate. That's my point.
But this is the thing. So even those politicians in the West, you take Putin, who is a criminal, right? But people can find stories that make him look even worse, things that are outside of reality. But I'm not comparing Prophet Muhammad to Putin. But all I'm saying, like, someone as bad as Putin has stories that are worse about him. And someone as good as Prophet Muhammad is going to even have more worse stories about him because he's such a good person. There isn't a good person where people make things up about him. So, and the things that you're taking from the hadith in the way people thought back then, right? What we would consider maybe harsh and draconian at our time was the norm back then. And B,
so Islam isn't timeless? So Islam isn't eternal and timeless?
Islam is timeless because the God that created this religion, he knows the evolution that's going to happen. And whatever we're going through nowadays, the Quran is still applicable.
Muhammad, you can't have it both ways. Either they thought different and that was draconian, or it's forever. It should be happening now. You can't have it both ways.
It is happening. It is happening how it's brought down.
With terrorist organizations. Yes.
You've got to jump into the closings. I want to give you a chance to respond. Muhammad, I do want to, just because we're over the open dialogue, I do want to give you a chance to respond, but I think it's best if it's within the closing statement, and then we'll go into the Q&A after those closings. So it'll be 4 minutes per team, in particular 2 minutes per person or so. With that, we'll kick it over to both Finding Truth and Muhammad. The floor is all yours first.
Okay, shall I start? How many minutes do I have?
It's 2 minutes per person.
Okay. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. My opening statements, my rebuttals, and my discussions with David and Nuriyah essentially revolve about one fact. In terms of interpersonal conduct and interpersonal values, the Quran has continued the tradition that has come through revelation to this human race from Allah through time, to observe justice, kindness, generosity, and to go away from obscenity, shameful actions, injustice, and all bad deeds. Islam is the last, or one of the last traditions alive on the face of this earth, who ubiquitously commands its followers to be good, not only to their to people who believe in their same religion, but also to people who do not believe in their religion, whether they are living with them in their country or they are living in other countries. This has been exemplified in Islamic history with millions and billions of people converting to Islam just because they have dealt with Muslims on the personal level. This has been exemplified by Jewish communities on the face of the earth only having the one place on the face of the earth for hundreds of years that Jews can live in peace in a community that does not oppress them and run after them was in Muslim states. Christians in predominantly Christian places like Egypt for hundreds and hundreds of years, for 600 years almost, or 500 years, until today, has a significant amount of people who are quite strong Orthodox adherents to Christianity. And this happens in not only Egypt, other places. Muslims have great respect to their women, and women have specific high status in the religion of Islam. I think it is a very solid case that Islam has elevated people who were pagan, tribal, continuously in war, people living in the middle of the desert, having no place in the history of the world stage, to people of the highest refined conduct, that have not only led humanity through a great empire or a great nation, but has also converted the rest of humanity, or a great portion of the rest of humanity, to the same ethical standard just by exchanging on the human interpersonal level.
You got it? Mohammed, you got about a minute and a half left.
Okay, so just to quickly summarize, as a closing statement, my opponents conceded at the beginning when they said the Quran has positive values and good values. It's actually filled with positive values and good values. There's over 6,000 verses in the Quran. They only wanted to concentrate on 5, which they misinterpreted, mistranslated, and they went down to a path where they're trying to label people terrorists because in their fake ideology, in their fake reality that gets passed down to them as lip service, they're so happy with it and they're so content with it, which it isn't applicable to reality, because whatever lip service they give you about human rights and all that, they themselves don't apply. So they couldn't look, they foresaw all the greatness that comes out of the Quran, and they wanted to concentrate on the times when there is trouble, like people fighting you, or there's people that are stepping over your rights, and how to act in those according to that, right? And how to defend the honor of God. So when people are insulting God, on how to treat those people. But they didn't want to talk about the actual topic of the debate, which was interpersonal conflict or interpersonal relationship. It's how a person, like not a state leader or people that we are not, okay, our everyday life, on how to treat people in commerce, in businesses, onto how to write loan agreements, on how to treat our families, how to treat our neighbors, how to treat people that come into our everyday life. The Quran is full of wisdom when it comes to that. So thank you for conceding the debate.
Thank you very much. We'll kick it over to David and Nuriyah.
Fight those who do not believe in Allah. In a book that claims to be perfectly clear in its commands, that is very, very dangerous. There was some talk about dhimmis, the meaning of the word dhimmi having some positive connotations. This is the commentary of Ibn Kathir. Paying jizya is a sign of kufr and disgrace. Allah said, until they pay the jizya, if they do not choose to embrace Islam, with willing submission, in defeat and subservience, and feel themselves subdued, disgraced, humiliated, and belittled. Christians and Jews are to be disgraced, humiliated, and belittled. That's according to Ibn Kathir. That does not sound like a positive meaning of our status. And keep in mind, we have it better than others. We're people of the book, so we actually have it better than, atheists or Hindus. So Allah claims to be clear in his commands, and he says things like fight those who do not believe. And then the solution to this is to go to earlier revelations that have been abrogated and say, well, that's what Allah really means. And the thing here is no Muslim would accept this if the situations were reversed. If some politician came out tomorrow and said, fight those who believe in Allah, Muslims would rightly say, what in the world are you talking about? If someone came out and said, do not take Muslims as friends, Muslims would rightly be outraged. But imagine them objecting and saying, how dare you say fight those who believe in Allah? And imagine people saying, oh, but if you go back to something earlier that this guy said years earlier, it's actually not as bad. No one would accept that as a response. Allah's final marching orders are to violently subjugate the world because of what people believe. That is the only interpretation that makes it. This is not something that Christians came up with. This is not something that atheists came up with. This is according to Muslim interpreters who are not reinterpreting the Quran to bring it in line with what they want to believe in the 21st century.
You got it. Nuriyah, anything?
Yeah, sure. Basically, just as Ahmed was saying, a sense of ummah, or the community or brotherhood, it might seem like a positive hallmark, one of the nice traits of the Quran, but it practically plays out as bigotry. The Quran observes if Muslims don't have this tight-knit community, their ideal to having a universal Islamic state and transformation will never come true, and the world will continue to reek of mischief. Without the ummah and a sense of brotherhood, Muslims will not successfully face the forces that are against Islam. The Quran says in Surah Al-Anfal 873, the unbelievers are protectors of one another. Unless you do this, protect each other, there will be tumult and oppression on earth and great mischief. I need you all to understand that their constant striving and struggle in the cause of the Islamic values and social change is essential to their very criteria of their faith. As David said, Islam has war against non-Muslims. Muhammad was accepting sex slaves and gifts such as Maria the Copt. He bought and sold slaves, and slavery was also progeny in slavery. The son of a slave would remain a slave. Muhammad did not change any of that. There are not enough redeeming qualities to the Quran to negate all the oppression and misogyny and violence that it perpetuates. No minority is safe under the guidance of the Quran and Sharia.
You got it. Thank you very much for that closing statement. We're going to jump into the Q&A. I want to say, folks, our guests are linked in the description. If you haven't checked out their links, you can open up an extra tab right now, as you do not want to miss out on their content. And even if you disagree with them, hey, might be good to understand more of what you disagree with. So this one coming in from, do appreciate it, T. Dak Jordan says, 60 verse 8, so Surah 60 verse 8 says, Allah does not forbid you from those who do not fight you because of religion, and do not expel you from your homes from being righteous toward them and acting justly toward them. Indeed, Allah loves those who act justly. I think that's for you, David and Nuriyah.
All right.
Go, David. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say we've already discussed that passage at length. Ahmed has given us his understanding, and I've responded. So maybe they posted that before we had that discussion.
You got it.
Probably.
This one from Deep Drinks Podcast says, this debate is over with one verse, Quran 40, verse 34. Let me pull that up. In the meantime, I'll read this next one. Deep Drinks Podcast also said, Nuriyah is dropping bombs. And Thunderstorm, I'm going to pull that verse, but I'm going to come back to it. Thunderstorm, in the meantime, said, most of the Muslim world is a life of poverty and suffering. You were better off with your ancient gods with beautiful kingdoms and cities. Any thoughts?
Yeah, if kingdoms and cities made anything good or bad, then why did Christianity come to the Roman Empire? The Roman Empire had great cities and everything. We are not here to live this world into great cities and homes. We are here to live this world in a righteous way and either deserve paradise or hellfire. This is what I would expect would be my answer, and that of David Wood also. But religion is something different from living in a big palace and having no values.
Even though Muhammad would get most of the booty of it anyway. Yeah.
Just to add on to that, it's like Islam, one of the verses is God created us to work. So he's testing us who's the best of us as workers. So we're not here to enjoy our time, and we're here to make the world a better place. And it's not about the things that we have, it's what we're doing with the things we have. So when it comes to a Christian value where we're in this world, we're not off this world, we're in this world to make it better. That's literally what Islam is. So it goes back to the verse in the Quran when it says, like, do you debate us or do you argue to us about God when we have our actions and you have your actions? We believe what was brought down to us. We believe what you have, but we're loyal to God. So that's why we're submitters. We're completely as loyal as we can to be God. So that's not about the stuff that we get. It's about our relationship with our Creator. He has all the world. Like, he makes our world a better place.
Mohammed, could I ask you a question on that? Have you read the hadith which says, you talk about the best of people and Muslims and their job as workers. The Sahih Bukhari 4557, which says, you true Muslims are the best of peoples ever raised up for mankind, means the best of peoples for the people as you bring them with chains on their necks till they embrace Islam.
Well, that kind of goes against to what I was saying. So to me, I'm not a person that takes these hadith as something that it's applicable to all times. The Quran is applicable to all times. The hadith has its place. So there's, yes, during wartime, when I'm doing the actions in awareness of God, and then I'm fighting a people that are hurting me, at that point, the best action that I can do is fight. So yeah, I'll bring them to chains and pull them down and put them down if they're trying to extinguish the light of God. So it's for you, you're twisting it. It's not about me going and attacking. Inna Allah la yuhibbul mu'tadin. God doesn't like those that transgress. But if you transgress against me, the wisdom and the action of the time is to fight back. So I'm gonna fight however you're fighting me. I don't understand where the problem is that. So if like the Americans fight or the Western people fight, they're not terrorists. But when we fight back, now we're terrorists. It's crazy.
Then you say the opposite, like, of course I'm not going to initiate the greeting, obviously following your prophet's sunnah, right? He didn't initiate the greeting, and you said, of course I wouldn't. Why would I? I'd wait for them to greet me. So how in all of this are you Muslims the better people or the bigger people? How are you promoting good interpersonal values when you can't even summon up the cheek to say, oh, assalamu alaikum to somebody that doesn't believe in your religion? Are you that petty?
I'll give you a chance to respond, Muhammad, and then we've got to go to the next question.
Oh yeah.
One second. I just wanted for Muhammad's going to respond to kind of there's an additional part to that. It's not just don't greet people until they greet you first. It's force them to the narrowest part of the road as well. So you're walking down the street, and this wouldn't be everywhere in the world, but let's say in a place that's dominated by Muslims, you're walking down the street, a Jew or a Christian is walking past you, you force him to a certain part of the road before you greet him. So you're actively mistreating and persecuting him because of his beliefs, and then seeing if he greets you. And so I was just wondering, it looks like Nuriyah wanted you to, what is your thoughts on that hadith?
So what? Okay, based on what you just said, what's your interpretation when God says, "Do not debate with the people of the book except with what you can find as best." Like, so don't and do not like say negative things and bad things to them unless they oppress you. So you're taking to maybe specific events where it is applicable. If me and you are fighting, right? I'm more loyal to your God. So your God is my God. There is only one God. We're trying to get closer to that God, the God of Abraham. So if you're showing this loyalty and you're saying insultive stuff about God, and me and you started to fight, at that point, I'm not even going to put you in the corner of the road. I'm going to make sure you don't even get close to me, not in physical ways, but I'm going to try to abuse you because you're trying to abuse what God told you not to do. You're breaking your own religion at that point. It's a sense of loyalty, and this is what the world is about. If you're not loyal to the country that you're living in and you're showing like ways to hurt the people around you, they're going to jail you.
Got to jump to the next one. This one coming in. Oh, that's right. So this one came in earlier from Deep Drinks Podcast, says this debate is over with one verse, Quran 4:34. It's actually a little bit harder for me compared to looking up like New Testament or Old Testament verses. I think this is the verse that corresponds with 4:34.
434 is the verse that says that if you fear, different translations will say, rebellion or something like that from your wife, then you first warn her, and then if that doesn't work, again, assuming that this is escalating, you warn her, banish her to beds apart, and then beat her.
Let's see. The way and this is hard for me because this is really long. It's like a whole paragraph, which is why but I've checked multiple websites to be sure that I've got the right one. But let's take it on what David had said. Muhammad in Finding Truth, I want to give you guys a chance to respond since David already spoke.
Yeah, so just a little comment. It is not consensus with Muslims that you do not return salam to a non-Muslim. Actually, Ibn Mas'ud, Abu Darda, Abu Umama, and Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, the famous caliph, had no issue with it. It's probably contextual because Jews in Medina at a point of time were twisting the words of salam, making it sam, which means death. So probably the context was, don't start until you listen to what the kind of salam that he's throwing at you, so that there is no animosity. But later, when Islam was established and Muslims and Christians became part of the community, there are other adillah and other ahadith that says that there is no issue with and the actual doing of prominent Sahaba like Ibn Mas'ud, they had no issue with it. So this is just to close that other point. Now, Surah 4, Ayah 34 is talking about treatment of wives, actually. So yeah. So okay. So if you compare that to Western secular standard, you will have an issue. If David compares it to his own religion, I'm not sure if he will have an issue or not. If there was a Jew sitting here comparing it to his own religion, I'm not sure he will have an issue or not. But anyway, the Islamic concept is that the family is a unit. The family solves its issues inside the family. There are specific authorities given to the wife and the husband in terms of dealing with the internal issues of the family. However, it is not like, for example, Nuriyah said that the right, for example, to make divorce is unilateral. If a woman does not like her husband, she can actually seek divorce. If the husband does not like to give divorce, she can actually seek khula and get out of the family. Is it true that in the Quran, in that specific ayah, there is a hierarchy or there is a step-by-step way to deal with disobedience in the family from the part of the wife towards the husband? Yes, it is true. The 3 steps that are described in the Quran are in the Quran. I cannot be honest and say, no, they are not, or reinterpret them. I don't like this way. However, I can tell you how the Prophet, the grand interpreter or commentator of the Quran, handled this verse. The Prophet himself, at a point of time, before the ayah came down, prohibited hitting of wives altogether. And then a specific incident happened, and then this ayah came down. And the Prophet's sunnah is that if he wants to punish, he will poke with a siwak as a way to explain that it has gone beyond reason or beyond being able to talk about it. When things went completely out of line, the Prophet would actually not talk to his women. It has not been recorded at any point of time that he has hit his women. So this is my comment on that. Yeah.
Thank you very much. This one coming in from
James, sorry, can I respond to that, or do we not have time?
If it's really short and pithy, because we've got a good enough questions.
Really quick. Ahmed, the khulla is a later development that we see in countries like Tunisia, Pakistan, all of this. It doesn't come directly out of the Islamic scripture. And second of all, what you're trying to make excuses for and gloss over is the fact that the Quran enshrines domestic violence. Whether there's a hierarchy or not, the miswak thing that you talked about is literally how depraved this is, because they talk about the same miswak that they would use to tame cattle and animals is the same thing that they'd use to beat their wives. Then there's the difference between the stipulation to beat your wives differently from how you'd beat your sex slaves as well. So essentially the Prophet had so many instances when he could have changed this or repudiated a wife beater, but he didn't.
A miswak is a toothbrush.
I can give you a super pithy response, but I've got to jump to the next one.
Yes, yeah, exactly. The thing
that miswak is a toothbrush. It's like this pencil. Okay, it is not a hitting. It's not a hitting tool.
Yes, but but the branches of the miswak, which is made of a twig that they clean their teeth with, Bedouins, right, is also what they would use on a scale to whip their chattel. I don't know if you've read this or not, but they would.
Miswak is only used for brushing teeth. It's not used for anything else.
But the twig, you know what I'm talking? What's miswak?
I know.
Where does it come from? It's a bark of a tree or what?
Yeah, it is. Miswak, when you use the word miswak, you mean a toothbrush. If you want to refer to the twig, you say arak, which is the name of the tree. You don't say miswak.
I stand corrected. Thank you, Ahmed. But the domestic violence remains. The word might be different, sorry, but the domestic violence remains.
The little toothbrush interpretation makes no sense, because we read Sahih al-Bukhari and we see a woman being beaten until her skin turned green. The idea that this is just a little tap with a toothbrush to show that things have gone too far doesn't seem to fit some of the descriptions of how severe these beatings were.
And Umar ibn Khattab said the Prophet said to not ask a man why he beats his wife, and screams were heard from Umar's house. So I guess it's more than a toothbrush. But yeah, sorry, go ahead, James.
No problem. Well, this one coming in from, do appreciate your question. Seville says, funny how a Christian's best friend is an atheist. How do you like that insult, David? Nuriyah is your best friend.
Well, we're not best friends, but yeah, we're friends, and the fact of the matter is, we're on the same side of this issue. This book calls for the violent subjugation or execution of Christians, Jews, atheists, Hindus, Yazidis, Zoroastrians, across the board. So, I mean, if we're talking about what this book teaches, as far as we're concerned, we're all in this. I mean, we're all in the same boat here. We're on the same side.
Actually,
got
that
it.
book
And
you're holding,
this
the
book as
that-
well is empty because there's nothing in the Quran for women. So if the common denominator is that book, David and I definitely are on the same side. Until it calls for, things against us. Yeah, that's why we are.
Sure, but that book says that those who ally with disbelievers, non-believers, they are them. So you allying with an atheist is just proving that you're an atheist, David Wood.
No, so, yeah, but that's an Islamic claim that if you're friends. By the way, thank you for admitting that it means friends. By the way, notice
If you ally
that's
with an
your
atheist,
book.
You're an
That's
atheist.
so notice the interpretation. If you take an atheist as an ally, that means you're an atheist. So if Muhammad just admitted that if he takes anyone else as an ally in any situation, here's something I agree with this person on, then that person is now some other system of belief. So notice if I noticed that on Ahmed's channel, he talks about a lot of scientific issues, and I've already invited him on. Imagine I invite Ahmed on and I say, hey, why don't we talk about scientific evidence for the existence of God? We'd be allies in proving the existence of God, but according to you,
That's not allies. You see, you like to twist things.
of course it is. If we were
That's not allyship. That's not allyship. Having someone
in the sense that you just applied to me and Nuriyah, we disagree on a lot of things. We agree on this. You've said that makes us allies. Well, guess what? Me and
an alliance with her
and
to debate
Ahmed.
religion.
Notice if I took Ahmed as part of an alliance and hey, we're going to defend the existence of God, that would make him a Christian according to you. Then notice you're pointing out some of the problems with your book here.
It's not about pointing problems with my books. If he allies with you and he takes you as an ally to go fight against disbelievers and atheists, even by words and debates, at that point he's still in line. But if you're going to go with someone who denies your God and denies your Lord, and at that point, how are you showing loyalty to Lord? Because me and Ahmed, we're doing this in the name of God. Who are you doing this in the name of who? Because you're going with someone who completely disregards the fact that God exists and that there's a day of judgment.
Want to give
And
the last word, David, we gotta go.
Yeah, your book calls for our violent subjugation. I mean, if Nuriyah and I were in the same building and it were on fire and it's burning up, we would probably try to help each other get out of there. Why? We're all human beings. It wouldn't be, oh, you're an atheist, I can't help you, because then I'd be an ally if we're trying to get out of this flaming building or something like that.
But I would help you too. So you see, you're putting things that are incorrect, because if you save an innocent soul, it's like you save the whole world.
Well, we're innocent now. Awesome.
I must go.
We're innocent.
I hate to do this, but it's just because the original super chat was meant to indict David for being friends with Nuriyah, I got to give him the last word. This one from Coffee Mom says, can you advocate for Islam and not be a misogynist? I have a feeling that was kind of rhetorical, but we'll give you a chance to respond.
Yeah, I can advocate for Islam and not be a misogynist, of course. I can do it at least.
Or I can die trying.
No, you can't. You will not die trying, because if you have this discussion with me, it's just a different paradigm. Islam, like Christianity, like Judaism, like Hinduism, like all revelations coming from God, puts a specific hierarchy in the management of society.
This one coming in.
The only thing is that secular world has put all the controls at the level of the government. It is unnatural.
You got it. This one from Dashia Hewitt, let me know if I pronounced it right. It says, it's a reason why it was called pre-Islamic. Judaism and Christianity was in Arabia first. You can't tell me they didn't influence Islam when we can see it for ourselves.
Yeah, I don't know who that's directed at. I would say indisputably there were all kinds of things, and you know, our friends can respond here. But excuse me, I don't want to call you friends because that might. Wait, no, okay.
No,
Ahmed, I could call you a friend because you really. I don't know if that would throw Muhammad off. But yeah. So I mean, Islam really looks like just a collection of the things that were circulating around Muhammad during his time. So you had Jewish monotheism there. You had all sorts of teachings about Jesus and Mary and so on circulating in Arabia. You had various beliefs about the Kaaba and the rites that were performed there. You had even teachings about, you know, houris and paradise and so on. Islam looks like everything was just collected into a big ball and claimed to be from a prophet.
This one coming in from Do appreciate your question. Samir Farsain says, Nuriyah, you are wrong. Islam does not say not to greet non-Muslims. Quran 4:96 says, do not say to those who greet you, you are not Muslim. So, are you lying for your cause? You just used, let me know if I pronounce this right, taqiyya? Muslims don't.
I can't tell if this is a joke or not. When we talk about when she brings up the statement, do not greet the people, do not give the people of the book the greeting first, force them to the narrowest part of the road. That's a quote from Muhammad. That's a quote from Muhammad. So if we're making it up, if Nuriyah is making it up, if this was a serious claim and not a joke, then the claim would be that Nuriyah actually has a time machine. She went back in time, inserted this into the Muslim sources on the lips of Muhammad, and that it's all a lie.
Yep, and there's also a funny story. I think it's Umar ibn Khattab's son actually said Assalamu alaikum to a Jew and then realizes that he shouldn't have, and he runs back and says, give me my greeting back. So that's how seriously they take this.
He accidentally greeted a Jew.
Yeah.
You got this one coming in from, do appreciate it. Sarah Rainey says, can a Muslim love a non-Muslim from their heart?
Can they, Ahmed?
Well, yeah, I don't think there is an issue there. Actually, I have quoted to David during our conversation that it is a prediction of the Quran that Muslims and Christians, specifically Christians who identify as Christians, not Christians who are Christians in the birth certificate or something. People like David who identify as Christians are destined to have great relations with Muslims. And on the individual level, this should be the case. Going back to the question about Judaism and Christianity being in Arabia, Islam considers itself part of a continuum that started from Adam and then to Abraham and then to Moses and then to Jesus. So Islam does not see itself as a distinct star in a constellation. It sees itself in a continuum, and all of those prophets are prophets of the same religion. It's the religion of Allah. Allah is in Arabic the name of God. And Egyptian Christians, for example, and Christians who are of the Arabic tongue call Allah their God too. So there is no distinction per se. Muslims and non-Muslims. At a point of time, the Prophet asked the Muslims to go to Abyssinia, Ethiopia now, to enjoy a peaceful life under the reign of a king who was a Christian just king. And I don't think any of the Muslims who went there hated the man for offering them protection.
You got it. Thank you very much for this question. Samir Farsain says, Wali, W-A-L-E-E, quote unquote, means someone who can act on your behalf and protect you. Allah said, Allah is the Mawla, it's M-A-W-L-A,
Mawla.
Mawla of believers. Did non-Muslim protect Uyghur and Syrians and Sudanese and Myanmarians? Am I saying that right? Says,
Myanmarians.
Thank you. Says Allah was right after all.
Yeah, so the claim here is that Wali, so Aliyah, we were talking about that earlier. So the claim here is that it refers to someone who can act on your behalf and protect you. And from our earlier discussion, there are the Awliya of Allah. So these would be people acting on behalf of Allah and protecting Him. And so the response here is that are non-Muslims protecting the Uyghurs who are being persecuted in China? Well, following that reasoning, I mean, Muslims aren't protecting them either. What are Muslims doing? You have Muslims who are speaking out against how Uyghurs are being persecuted, but so are non-Muslims. I made multiple videos condemning the treatment of Uyghur Muslims in China. But there is this ongoing problem. By the way, notice, if you take this seriously, so look at what this person is saying. This person is saying, look, Uyghurs are being mistreated and abused by Chinese communists. Therefore, Allah is right. Do not take Jews and Christians, which that's not who's doing that over there. Don't take Jews and Christians as your awliya. But I mean, think about that. I mean, if I were to see Ahmed walking down the street, and I were to say, hey, I'm going to go fight Ahmed because of something. Guess what? People are going to protect him, right? Police are going to protect him, and that's one of the scary implications of this verse. Don't take Jews or Christians as protectors, someone who can protect you. Like what? Police officers, like politicians, paramedics. Don't take Jews and Christians as these because they be in a position to protect you. Doesn't seem like good interpersonal relations.
Finish the verse.
This one coming in from Samir Farsain strikes again. He's got your number, David. He says, David, look at the camera with a straight face and repeat after me, quote, unquote, I didn't just brush the violence of Christianity under the rug and misquote Islam.
I don't recall talking about Christianity, so nothing to do with what are you talking about? I didn't just brush the violence of Christianity under the rug because I wasn't talking about it. So thanks.
This one from Upside Down Guy says, do you think Muslims did or would do 9/11 as told? I don't know if they mean like what proportion of Muslims on the planet would. I guess that's my best guess of what they mean.
I mean, I'd like to posit to Ahmed and Mohammed the fact that any perpetrators of 9/11 would claim to be inspired or potentially be inspired by the Quran. I think there's a problem there to unpack, but over to you guys.
Well, you gotta have to first prove it was like a Muslims that were perpetuating and made September 11, and it wasn't the U.S. government. So it's okay if
we're not gonna go into Muslim conspiracies right now. Osama bin Laden, when he was hiding up in the mountains, he openly said, we are going to declare war on America. And why is that? Obviously, he had his own reasons with Saudi Arabia, but it all comes down to the kuffar versus the Muslim. Am I correct?
But I'm talking about September 11. I'm not talking about what Osama bin Laden said, because there's videos saying that Osama bin Laden saying that we're not responsible for September 11. But it's okay. You cherry pick what you want.
And you bury your head in the sand, and you think your book gives amazing interpersonal conduct when people can 100%. Use that to fly into buildings. But sure.
This one
it was the Americans flying into buildings, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Coffee Mom says, can they address the relationships between men and women?
I want to respond to the matter of the 9/11. I don't think there is anything anywhere in the Sunnah or the Quran that commands any Muslim on the face of the earth to commit something like 9/11, regardless if Muslims did it or not. This is irrelevant. The question is, would they do it again? So let's say they didn't, or they didn't do it before. It's irrelevant. There is nothing in the Sunnah or the Quran that tells Muslims to go and blow up a building that is used for civilian use. It has no reference whatsoever anywhere.
Ahmed, are you expecting the Quran to say on September 9th, please hijack 2 planes
no,
this was not
the question, Nuriyah. I think the question was whether this action is acceptable or not to the Islamic doctrine, and it is not acceptable.
It is, because they had to deal with this issue when the issue came up of whether it's appropriate to use catapults in fighting, knowing that the catapults could hit people who weren't fighting and so on. And Muslims declared that it was acceptable. But I mean, the justification that was presented by Al-Qaeda is that if people are making mischief in Muslim lands, that's a death penalty, according to Surah 5, verse 33 of the Quran. But in Islam, the people who fund or make it possible to wage war in a Muslim land are equally responsible. That goes back to Muhammad, who said that it's not just the jihad warrior who gets a reward for what he's done. It's the person who's funded him to do that. And so the reasoning of Al-Qaeda is that the United States military is making mischief in Muslim lands, but who makes it possible for the U.S. military to make mischief? The American taxpayer, and that's why it's perfectly acceptable to just to do things like 9/11. So I know you're going to disagree with the interpretation. My only point is, they seem to have a point there as far as they're reconciling that with Islamic teachings.
In
And the
in one
collateral damage,
sentence,
also harks back to the hadith.
in two sentences, catapults are used to encircle or to conquer fortresses, typically, or fortifications around cities. So the context is different. This is number one. And number two, when Muslims were fighting the Romans, for example, and they went after defeating the Roman army, or within, they did not attack the population that was paying taxes to the Roman army. Paying taxes to your enemy does not make you part of your enemy.
This one coming in from Do Appreciate Your Question. Want to remind you folks, our guests are linked in the description, so you can always check those out. The Muslim apologist says the guy, let's see, okay, that's weird. Say, brothers, you are doing a, this is a different one. It says, brothers, you are doing a great job. Contact me after the debate. In particular, they're referring to you, of course, Muhammad and Finding Truth. This one coming in from Do Appreciate It. ES1002 says, Theus, are you only good so you can get to go to heaven?
Can you repeat that again?
They say, Theus, those of you who believe in a God, are you only good because you want to get into heaven?
So that would apply to three of us here. I'll go.
Of course.
Me, no. I try to do the right thing because there is a right thing to do. But if God told, because there are atheists who use this as an accusation and say, in religion, you're only being good because you think it's going to get you points later. That's not my moral view. I believe in a combination of divine command theory, natural law, and virtue ethics. But if the Almighty came to me right now and said, David, sorry, you're not going to heaven under any circumstances, I'd still try to do the right thing because it's the right thing.
You got it? Anybody else?
Yeah, my answer would be no and yes. I would like to do the right thing because right things typically make you happy. But yes, because you will not have an exclusive set of independently verified things that are right without a reference. And you get to choose your reference. So David chooses Christianity, I choose Islam. Maybe something in Islam or versus Judaism or Christianity or Hinduism is right in Islam and wrong somewhere else, or wrong in Islam and right somewhere else. I would not, for example, put money in the bank and take fixed interest. It is a crime in Islam because it causes specific backlashes to society. So the answer is there is no specific definite way to be good unless with a reference, and religious people use religion as their reference. So the answer would be yes, if you look at this perspective.
Also, just to add on to it from another theist, for me, it's not about the reward at the end. It's like me as a human being, I'm a social person. I like experiences of love, affection, and being close to somebody. And nobody can fill that requirement other than God. It's my relationship with God is that what drives me to do good to other people, because it just rewards me with such a positive and fulfilling feeling. And you could find that in all the religions, and that's all the religion is preaching you, because it's not about your reward in the end. The reward is technically still being in God's grace. That is my heaven, is the fact that I can speak to God without having like debating myself in regards to certain topics. And the love that I have for my God, it's nothing can compare. Like my biggest fear is losing that relationship. It's like God is telling you don't drink. So, but okay, maybe alcohol looks like fun for a little bit, but then I have a fear that, what if God, like that relationship and that love towards God starts to go away. And then at that point, I'll feel empty because I know how it felt to be empty before, and I don't want to have that feeling ever again. I love my mom, but it doesn't compare to that relationship with someone who's always there with me. And whatever bad is happening, it's because of my own direct input or someone else's input. And God is there to save me when I need it. So I don't know why these debates take so long, but it's like the best relationship you can ever have with anybody. And that's with God. So that's why
You got it. Thank you very much for this question as well. Here is Palmer says, will the Muslims debaters ever marry a 9-year-old, or would they if they were unmarried right now? If you're married right now,
would he go to Japan and marry a 13-year-old? Because that's the age of consent in Japan.
At least that's consent, is what I'm saying.
Well, my comment is that marriage in Islam is not related to age. Marriage in Islam is related to puberty. And this has been the universal law, regardless Muslims or not, even Christians or Jews or whoever. Women and men should not marry before they reach the age of puberty. It is false that Islam does not have an age barrier towards marriage. It is a natural barrier. It is naturally not connected to age. Age of puberty can be 15, can be 9, can be 20, I don't know. Doesn't matter, doesn't make a difference. It's puberty that makes somebody can marry or not.
We might need to discuss Surah 65, verse 4 at some point, and not just because we'd be misunderstanding it, but because, I mean, given what you just said, Ibn Kathir, Ibn Abbas, the two Jalals, even 20th century Muslim scholars like Maududi, right up into the popular da'is like Muhammad Hijab interpret Surah 65, verse 4 as referring to marrying and divorcing prepubescent girls.
David, let's cut this short. How old was Isaac's wife in the Bible?
Doesn't say, but she was certainly old enough to take care of 10 camels. No, it doesn't.
It's very clear how old Rebecca was.
Oh yeah, chapter and verse.
No. It's very clear if you look at the logic.
Chapter and verse.
3 years old.
Chapter and verse. I will bow down and recite the Shahada if you show me she was 3 years old.
You said the same thing about the gospel, and we showed you plenty of proof.
You showed me zero. You showed me never. You've never shown me one verse, and now you're just lying. Chapter and verse. It's very simple. Chapter such and such, verse such and such.
There is enough.
I will recite. I will bow down and recite the Shahada.
If the moon split,
chapter and verse. Prove me lying. Prove me lying. Prove me lying. Chapter and verse.
It's not about chapter and verse. The Bible is very clear on how Rebecca.
Let's see it. Let's see it. Give us the verse. I agree, but no, she's repeatedly called young woman. Do you think 3-year-olds are young women? This is what notice
commentaries, and you're pulling commentaries out of your head and whatever you like.
What commentary? That's what the text says. It calls her a young woman and says she watered 10 camels. A 3-year-old? I have a 4-year-old who couldn't water one camel. Notice the principle, ladies and gentlemen, because there's always a principle. If you tell this is the principle in Islam. If you tell the truth about our prophet by quoting our sources, we'll lie about your prophets. And these are from people who claim to respect Abraham and Isaac, lying about Abraham and Isaac, saying that Abraham sent someone to get a 3-year-old daughter. Notice, it's Muhammad married and had sex with a little girl, and then in response, we'll say all the prophets did all these horrible things. What devout Muslims we are. Welcome to Islam.
This one, I'll give you a chance to quickly.
I need to have a little comment. Islamic belief believes that the rules that relate to marriage and that puberty is a condition for marriage is an ancient rule. So I don't think any prophet of Christianity or Judaism had sex with a girl before puberty. This is something that is universally prohibited.
Ahmed, could you quote us where the prohibition exists, where it says that puberty is a prerequisite to marriage?
Yeah, and I'm actually happy to have a separate debate about this. But when you look, for example, to Surah An-Nisa, there is no, it says, فَانْكِحُوا مَا طَابَ لَكُم مِّنَ النِّسَاءِ, for example. And Nisa is different from Inath, okay? Nisa means a woman, and a woman is different from a girl in English. A woman means somebody who can be designated as good for marriage. You don't call a little girl a woman. Woman means somebody who has gone past puberty.
So what does it mean when it says those who have not yet menstruated? Who is that referring to exactly?
If you are referring to Surah Al-Talaq, ayah number 4. So when I studied jurisprudence, you know, there can be a medical condition where a woman never gets the cycle, okay? This does not prevent a woman from getting married at all. So the Islamic jurists put the age of 15. If somebody does not reach the age of puberty in a natural way, he becomes a full citizen at the age of 15, which makes him capable of doing whatever an adult can do. This includes marriage, this includes control to his property, and other things. So being, for example, accountable against a judge, etc.
And a woman?
So if a woman, for example, is married at the age of, let's say, 20, but she never got her cycle because of a medical condition, and now this surah is talking about talaq, about divorce, she needs to have her months of clearance. So since she doesn't have period anyway, okay, then you will just count 3 lunar months. Now, some jurists, I don't know what is the reference, if they are pulling this out of their head or what, are saying that this relates to, if somebody, and probably there is somebody who would say that this relates to somebody, a girl who is married and she did not reach yet the age of menstruation, and hence so and so, please prove to me in the first place that a girl can get married before puberty. This is unheard of in Islam. It's completely false.
Aisha to Muhammad?
Aisha, so there is a difference between signing a contract and consummation. Okay, if you in any way, regardless you have reached the age of puberty or not, if the marriage is not consummated, then the matter of counting the months is out of the way in all cases. So you count the months of iddah only if consummation happens.
Ahmed, I hate to say
that's correct, but yeah, it gives the iddah specifically for the girl who's not reached puberty. So this presupposes that the marriage was consummated with a girl before she reached puberty. Again, this is Ibn Abbas, this is Ibn Kathir, this is the 2 Jalals, this is Maududi, this is even, Muhammad Hijab stood there at Speaker's Corner. Keep in mind, I would love for him to be wrong because this is horrifyingly. Thank you. Oh, good. I'm glad. I think he's right, but I hope you're right, and I hope you'll. I really hope. I would actually like, and I would share if you make a video explaining why that interpretation is wrong. Because at the end of the day, even though we're criticizing Islam, we are talking about actual people, and I would like it if people didn't believe it was okay.
The reason I'm saying he's wrong is that this ayah is referring to divorce. Now, if you want to see the criteria and the constraints of marriage, go to the ayat that talk about marriage. Ayat that talk about marriage talk about nisa. Nisa is women. There is no girl getting married. It's not there, simply. You cannot get married, consummate your marriage before you have reached puberty as a woman. You cannot have sex with a woman who did not reach puberty. Otherwise, she is not defined as a woman in the first place. She remains a girl, and marrying girls and consummating the marriage with a girl who did not reach puberty is not permissible.
But 65.4 specifically refers to women who have not reached the age of menstruation, so it's clearly using it in a broader sense that doesn't refer to post-pubescent.
Yeah, what I'm saying here is that what the explanation of the ayah, at least from how I studied the ayah, is that it is referring to people who did not menstruate. But since they were married, they have at least reached the legal, from the Islamic perspective, age of marriage, which if not by reaching menstruation in their cases, then would be by reaching the age of 15, for example, or an age where, okay, this is an adult. If a woman, let's look from the woman's perspective. If a woman has a medical condition where she does not menstruate altogether, her ovaries are not working, or her genital system is not working, is she prohibited to marry for the rest of her life? No, she can marry.
If that's what that referred to, but again, in the commentaries, this actually referred to people who were specifically asking Muhammad about the divorcing women who didn't have a monthly cycle. And one of them was specifically asking, what about girls who are too young? What about girls who are too young to have a monthly menstrual cycle? Yeah. And that's what the Quran verse was responding to. So it didn't sound like it was responding to a medical condition. The commentary specifically referred to someone who's too young to have a monthly cycle.
As I was saying, even if you look at that ayah and look at the beginning of the ayah, it says, وَاللَّائِي يَئِسْنَ مِنَ الْمَحِيضِ مِن نِسَائِكُمْ. And those who have, so it's talking about min nisaikum, those who have went into despair of your women. It's not saying min inathikum, of your females or of your girls. It's saying of nisaikum. Nisa means women, and a woman is a female that is an adult.
Yeah, but it's the women who have not yet reached puberty. So that's the point. It sounds like it's talking about it's talking about a broader category. If it's women who haven't reached puberty, And again, the Muslim commentator says talking about someone who's too young for a monthly menstrual cycle. So the point is, it doesn't sound like it's talking about only adult women.
The point is, it doesn't say the women that did not reach puberty. It says the women that did not menstruate. وَاللَّائِي لَمْ يَحِضْنَ, those who have not menstruated. So it is possible, Quran addresses all different possibilities. So you have a woman that did menstruate and did not reach menopause yet, a woman that did menstruate and reached menopause, and a woman that never had menstrual cycle, for example, for a medical condition.
No,
Okay?
but
all are three possible.
Word yet, even yet implies that they are going to have it in the near future. It comes under the umbrella that David was talking about when all of the tafsirs mention pre-pubescent. I mean, either Allah is a terrible communicator if he can't specify women with a medical condition. You're giving a very, very narrow just a scapegoat to say it's people with a medical condition. Allah could have said that, but to leave the umbrella open like this to say those who have not yet menstruated, is that not very, very bad foresight on Allah's part? If that means that people in Afghanistan will be selling and marrying 6-year-olds, and they are quoting the sunnah of the Prophet when they are doing so.
I'll give you a chance to respond, and then we have to go to the next one.
It is not permissible. It is not permissible in Islam to marry and consummate marriage with a little girl who is 6 or 8 or 9 if she has not reached. If she has not, he was wrong. Yeah.
I've got to go. This one coming in from Samir says, "Asala muala mulaikam is a promise of peace before being greeting. So if you harm a person after that promise, you're a traitor. Islam says to keep that promise."
I think he's referring to the matter of not starting with salam with somebody else who is not a Muslim. And I think he is referring to the context here one way or the other. So at a point of time, people of the book in Medina were having special behavior of animosity that they even started saying salam in a twisted way that meant death instead of salam. So I think, and I have already explained that the doctrine of salam in the typical normal conditions is that Muslims give salam to everybody.
You got it. This one coming
other
in.
than combatants.
But also Muhammad breaks treaties all the time, so I don't think breaking a promise is a big deal. Anyway.
Never happened. We can have a debate about war in Islam if you want.
Muslim apologist says one of the non-Muslims here is an atheist pretending to be a Christian. How do you like them apples, David?
Yeah, that's what it's. We've talked. Me and AP have talked about this before. It's like the in thing. Like they'll say, "I'm actually an undercover atheist pretending to be a Christian to mislead people," but then they'll talk about AP and say he's actually an undercover Christian pretending to be an atheist to deceive people. So it's just whatever you claim to be. Guys like Mensch, that's who that is. Like to say, aha, he's actually something different from what he claims to be, just so they can try to, discredit any points we're bringing up. But yeah.
Juicy. Sammy Veda says, and then folks, we can't take any more questions. We're just going to read the rest of the ones that we have, and then we're going to wrap up. But this one, Sammy Veda says, quote unquote, worst of creatures, 98 verse 6, Islam commands a supremacist mindset. Muhammad agrees and justified it multiple times as they are fighting for the true God.
Is this a question?
It's more of a statement. I think that they're just saying Islam has a supremacist mindset is the accusation.
No, I don't think. Islam has a mandate of relaying the truth to people, and that's what it just wants to do, just like Christianity and just like Judaism wanted to do at their time.
This one from
Seville. And until today.
Yeah. Says, David is the Trinity, the Father, in parentheses, you, the Son, and in parentheses, apostate prophet, and the Holy Spirit, Nuriyah.
No, thanks.
This one from Bitter Truth says, Quranic text, do you think is special, and don't you think it was Muhammad text?
As a Muslim and as somebody who is very conversant with the formal and spoken Arabic language, I can tell you that it is impossible that the Quran is narrated by a human being.
This one from ES1002 says, David, I'm sorry, I meant those two, but great answer. I can't remember which. They had one earlier on, but they give a thumbs up. Samir Farsain says, David, if Islam said God had a baby, would you attack it?
What?
This one.
What?
That reminds me of the William Lane Craig debate when They asked William Lane Craig if he'd prefer to be a Muslim baby or a atheist baby. Bitter Truth says, Muhammad, do you support child marriage? GE. What's GE?
No. So I think I don't support my child marriages. My personal view on my religion is that just like how the Jews and the Christians, they started to add some things later on that aren't part of the religion that kind of diluted people out of the way. People's reverence to certain hadith isn't correct. So Sahih Bukhari is Sahih in the sense that the sanad is correct, so like the witnesses are correct, but the context doesn't mean that it's all necessarily that has to be taken with. And not everyone is taking everything that's in the Sahih. So for us, it's the Quran is the first, and the Quran is the trump, right? And the narrations about Aisha's age, there is some narrations that should say when she was playing with toys is when a certain verse came down, which would make her around 8 years old, and this is before they even immigrated to Abyssinia. So it's just like how certain things can be twisted to show a really bad image of Muhammad, certain things can also be twisted to show a really good image or whatever the person is trying to sell. But when it comes down to the Quran, you don't have those misinterpretation and those issues. So when it comes to child marriages, it's very clear that you're like oppressing somebody, you're going against what God has given you, and that's not something that's permissible. So, and just to answer Nuriyah on a point she was making earlier, when God said like those that didn't menstruate, and it sounds like he's saying because God is saying the truth. It's not lack of communication, it's ultimate communication. So he's saying it in a sense that they haven't menstruated, but some of them might menstruate later. So there are women where their menstruation is either really late or the fact that they couldn't have kids and all of a sudden they were able to have kids. So it's also covering that truth. And God is speaking the complete truth in the Quran. I hope that clears some of the issues.
So just answering the question, it is not up to Muhammad or to me to support child marriage. I have just said something very simple and very clear. Until a female is identified as a woman, unless there is a medical condition, you cannot get married. Now, France in April 2021 changed the age of consent related to sex to 15. Maybe it's still 18 in some places. Is this child marriage from the perspective, for example, of Germans or Swedes? Islam has a very simple criteria that relates to the biology of the human being. Puberty, you can marry. Before puberty, you cannot. Very simple.
You got it. Thank you very much for this question. This one coming in from Bitter Truth says, but Sahih al-Bukhari says Aisha was watching Ethiopian show. She hasn't reached her puberty age. It's clear Muhammad married with child. Finding truth. Why aren't you admitting this, they say?
I don't know if watching an Ethiopian show makes you before or after puberty. I think it's completely irrelevant.
Which
is just young.
I don't know who. There's a passage in Bukhari which says that Aisha hadn't reached puberty in that. So I think you guys would read it and say she must not have been married yet or something like that. Like she was watching that before she was married. But it says Muhammad was like shielding her with his garment or something like that. So it sounds like they were together. But it says she hadn't reached puberty, and so I'm assuming you guys would say then that was sometime before they had consummated the marriage or something like that.
You got it. This one coming in. I appreciate it. Muslim apologist says Rebecca was 3 years old when she married Isaac. David, why are you upset? I think that was covered. Zagros Ozcan says
Hey, this is so funny. You get this narration where Abraham sends his servant to get a wife for Isaac. Goes and she's out doing her chores and taking care of animals and so on. And then this guy shows up with 10 camels and she says, "Hey, I'll water all these camels for you," which those things can drink dozens of gallons of water each. And it says she waters them all, repeatedly calls her a young woman. And you could tell by the conversation and so on, she's not 3. I have a 4-year-old. My goodness, I would not trust him to be out in the wilderness taking care of animals and so on. But it's just a weird situation because you'd wonder why would someone want to say, "Aha, she was 3." But the only reason is because there are critics who point out that that Muhammad married a 9-year-old, and so we'll go ahead and claim that Rebecca was 3, not realizing you are attacking both Isaac and Abraham in that. You're saying that they both promoted pedophilia. And again, these are people who claim to respect the prophets.
Again, you're making a mistake there where we're showing you, because there's inconsistency with the Bible because of its way of translation or transmission, that there are some ways to twist the verses.
Oh, you could twist it. You could twist anything. I agree.
And this is written by Jewish commentators that how to prove that she's 3 years old. Now, and how does this apply to this conversation? Is that you keep going to certain hadiths that you're misinterpreting,
which state clearly that Aisha was 9 years old. It's not us trying to interpret it. Notice, Muhammad. If you want to say those, I'm agreeing with you. I'm agreeing with you. If you want to say those hadiths are unreliable, you could say that, because keep in mind, Bukhari is written 2 centuries after the time of Muhammad. There's all sorts of times for things to be messed with and so on. If you're saying that, that's fine. But we're not misrepresenting things when we say, according to Sahih al-Bukhari, Aisha was 9 years old. The misrepresentation is you're putting the value of those words on the same values as the word of God. So this is the word. This is some guidance that was left after Prophet Muhammad, which is hadith. We don't believe the Quran's the word of God. We don't believe that. But I would agree with that.
You're talking to Muslims.
I'm agreeing with you. In Islam, the Quran is the supreme authority. If a hadith contradicts the Quran, you throw out that hadith. I agree. I would agree with you on that.
Which this is the case here. So there's a lot of hadith that you guys use that, look at this proof. It's either that hadith was for a very specific period where there's uncertainties that were happening around with that we don't have the full picture, or the other thing is it's clearly contradicting the Quran. And
but the Quran never says that Aisha was some other age.
This one coming
it's not in the Quran.
But the Quran is saying do not marry prepubescent young people. So
just a little comment here.
65.
I'm really sorry. I've got to move forward. This Zacharo Zoskan says, in my village, a 6-year-old boy can take care of 100 cows. This one coming in from Bitter Truth says, got that one. Bitter Truth also says, saying al-Bukhari Hadith 6130, clearly saying Aisha hasn't reached her puberty age. Muhammad thing with Aisha when she was 6. Saudi Mufti Fatwa 88-2000 also confirms.
See, the debate was about the Quran. This is what happens in these debates every time. We talk about these exact same topics as if I'm supposed to throw away my whole religion because you can't get over just one fact that we have a misunderstanding and try to discuss the Quran.
Yes, we can't get over the fact that the tafsir says prepubescent girls. You're right. But anyway.
No, because you have a misunderstanding and it's not correct what you're saying. We're here to talk about the Quran.
So did the best Islamic scholars who have written these. They also were misguided. They didn't mean that Aisha was playing with dolls. They didn't mean that it refers to women who have not yet menstruated because they've not yet reached puberty. We don't see that in the lived example of the Prophet.
Well, here's the thing that I'm trying to explain to you is just because they have things that pass down that they have to be apologetic for. It's just of a sense of fear of leaving whatever they believe. It's the exact same thing that happened to Christianity when additions had to happen, or additions were added to Christianity, like saying that Jesus is the Son of God. Of course, the Muslims are not going to these extremes, but they're saying things that they need to defend because that's what they were passed down to. But if you investigate the Quran, it doesn't change my life in any way, shape, or form, and it's a religion. It's supposed to be personal. And B, most of the stuff that they're saying, the only proof is someone else said it. It's not from the word of God. I'm not putting down what the companions of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, did, and the people that came after him. But some of them were bad players. You got to understand that. Just like how in Christianity, some of the people that heard the religion, they were bad players. So a lot of the things when it came to Aisha, it's a political issue. I swear to God, it's a political issue.
This one from ES1002 says, what is the relation of Muslim and ex-Muslim? Bukhari 3017.
Quoting a hadith just by the number is very difficult.
Yeah, there are different numbering systems.
Okay.
Even the hadith before, I couldn't respond because this is just a number. I couldn't even hear the number.
I think that's the hadith about somebody who changed their religion getting burned, and it was that burning somebody is not the desired punishment because that should be reserved for Allah and hellfire. So it was somebody that changed their religion. I think it's emphasizing that Muhammad said, whoever changes his religion, kill him, and somebody was reenacting that, if I'm not mistaken.
This one from
God clearly said that who changes their religion, there's no compulsion in religion.
Dashia Hewitt says, Woods, plural, says, Wood, you say you have something over people who need evidence for fictitious characters in a book, parentheses, atheist. You do realize you only have a book, right?
Well, thank you for calling me Woods. I know I do the work of at least two people, so. You say you have something over people who need evidence for fictitious characters in a book. You do realize you only have a book, right? I don't know what this is saying. I don't know what it means to say I only have a book. I definitely got much more than a book, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think it's not all atheists, just some atheists will just sometimes
like I got a pen here, you know.
I think they mean like they try to say like that Christians all they have is their book says something. They don't have any sort of like arguments like the cumulative.
No, that's nonsense. You might disagree with it. I mean, and by looking at his YouTube channel, Ahmed seems to be in the same boat. We would say no, there are arguments for all kinds of things. At the end of the day, we believe in books, but we believe in them for reasons. You might disagree with those reasons.
Zagros Ozcan says, we've only got, I think, two more here. Zagros says, youngest known pubescent in medical history was a girl less than 5 years old. According to Islam, is it okay to not only marry her, but also to consummate the marriage?
Okay, so again, the criteria for marriage is puberty, whether for males or females. Now, I wouldn't go and marry a 6-year or 7-year-old if she has actually reached puberty, because there are other criteria. So there are, like anything in life, there are necessary conditions and there are sufficient conditions. So a necessary condition for something like marriage, for example, can be puberty, but is it sufficient or not is another question. To marry somebody, he needs to be at the intellectual and cultural level and responsibility and accountability level, etc. to proceed. So even, for example, when Allah in Surah An-Nisa that we have talked about some of its ayat is talking about delivering to orphans their inheritance. Okay, he would say فَإِذَا أَنَسْتُم مِّنْهُمْ رُشْدًا. Not only that they have reached the age of puberty, but they can also be held accountable. They have become responsible people. So when somebody is looking for someone to marry, he needs to see that this person is also at a good level of responsibility to marry him. So if you go and just throw at the face of somebody, will you marry a 6-year-old or a 9-year-old or a 10-year-old? What is your criteria exactly? I think it's an unfair question.
This one coming in from, do appreciate your question. Jeffrey Anderson says, do Muslims know that the Tanakh, or what Christians call the Old Testament, and the Talmud are different things?
I know that they are different things, but do all Muslims know or not? I don't know.
Well, quick comment. God doesn't talk about the Talmud because it isn't a book of God. So the Torah is the book of God, and they're supposed to get their judgments out of the Torah. So this is just to relate some of the stuff that I was saying earlier. History repeats itself.
There are quotations from the Talmud in the Quran, though, so it doesn't look like the author of the Quran understood the difference between the Torah and the Talmud.
No, there's quotations that are in the Torah that they've also added in the Talmud.
No. Like Surah 5, verse 32, which talks about the teaching of the Jews that if anyone killed a man, it's as if he's killed all mankind. That's from the Talmud. That's not from the Torah.
So the Islamic perspective on that, David, would be that God, who is God of the Quran, is the same God of Judaism and Christianity. So if he says that this is something that I have revealed to Jews, it's just he revealed it. Where they wrote it is something else.
Well, I mean, it's
it doesn't make a
interesting
difference.
Because the claim that if anyone killed a man, as if he's killed all mankind, was an interpretation of something in the Torah, and the interpretation was of it's a story of Cain and Abel, and Cain kills Abel, and then it says, God says, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. And the rabbi who was commenting said that in Hebrew it's actually plural, bloods, your brother's bloods cries out to me from the ground. And he says, based on this, that it wasn't just Abel's blood crying out from the ground. It was all his future generations. And so so he says that the meaning of this is that when you kill someone, you're not just killing that person, you're killing all his future generations. But if I were defending your position, I would say that was the correct interpretation of that verse. And so maybe it was like implicitly contained in the Torah, and the Jewish rabbi brought out the meaning, and then Allah agreed with the meaning.
Actually, this exact commentary was made in the Quran after the story of Cain and Abel. So it says, من أجل ذلك كتبنا على بني إسرائيل أنه من قتل نفسا بغير نفس أو فساد
that's how it is in the Talmud. You have the story of Cain and Abel, and then it follows.
Yeah.
You got it.
At the end of the day, the Quran is just confirming that this is a revelation from God. Yeah.
This one coming in from, do appreciate it, is the last one. Karenza says, does Islam believe that a child that has entered puberty at 9 could have sex and be married to an older man over 50? Yes or no? Simple question. Kind of covered that.
The answer is no.
I just wanted to add before I actually agree that some of these are going too far off topic, and that the topic was about the Quran. So I think there are Quran, like Surah 65 verse 4 that we were bringing up some of these issues, but it seems to have partially diverged into just a big discussion of some of the hadiths and so on. So in other words, if you guys wanted to say, hey, we've already addressed these issues, that's fine.
Fair.
Yeah, the answer is no anyway.
With that, we're going to wrap up. Want to say huge thank you to our guests. It's been a true pleasure to have you, David Wood, Nuriyah, Muhammad, and Finding Truth. Their links are in the description box. If you haven't checked them out already, folks, this is a great opportunity to check out their links. And like I said, even if you disagree, this is a great opportunity to learn about a position that you disagree with, so you can at least understand what you're disagreeing with clearly. So with that, I want to say one last thank you to our guests. It's been a true pleasure to have you.
Thank you, peace.
Thank you, James.
Thank you, James.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks for all your questions, folks. Thanks so much for being with us. Stick around for a post-credit scene where I'll let you know about upcoming debates. I'll be right back in just a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, one moment while I load Zoom back up so you can see me. But in the meantime, I do want to say hello to you there in the old live chat. Thanks for being with us. We really do appreciate you hanging out here. Yeshua is King, good to have you with us, as well as Sola Scriptura, glad you're here. Servant Girl, glad you are with us. Whew. My dear friends, we've got a lot of upcoming debates. Oliver Catwell, good to see you as always. Want to say we really do appreciate you hanging out here, whether you be Muslim, whether you be atheist, whether you be Christian. And I think it's true. By the way, I want to say for our Muslim guests, we appreciate that they were so patient, because it is true. We did get a little bit sidetracked there toward the end, in particular with all the questions that it went toward in the Q&A. So that's something that I think I can do a better job of. So I do ask that, bear with me as I work on improving some of our moderation type stuff like that, as I do want to keep it on track. So want to say we do appreciate you being here, whether you be atheist, Muslim, Christian, Hindu, you name it. We're glad that you are with us. And got a lot of upcoming debates. For example, at the bottom right of your screen, we're very excited about this one. Daniel Hakikachu and Nuriyah will be debating whether or not mandatory veiling in Muslim countries is good or not. You don't want to miss that one. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, as it's going to be a lot of fun. And we have, in fact, a lot of upcoming debates. So if you look at our YouTube channel's homepage, as I highly encourage you, if you enjoy this debate, you're in good company. You'll find a lot of other debates that you'll enjoy here as well. In particular, let's say, yeah, you know, I'm looking around on the old YouTube channel of Modern Day Debate. Here are some of the upcoming debates. Flat Earth debate tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern. You guessed it, Flat Earth versus Globe Earth. I don't know if I'm pretty pooped out after this one. This 3-hour one, I'm tired. So I think I'm going to moderate that one. I might ask Amy because I'm really wiped out and I've got a lot of work to do. So either case, the show must go on. So somebody's going to moderate it. If Amy's not available, I'll do it myself. But it's going to be a 2-on-2. Witsit gets it, and his new, you might say, protege will be teaming up against Mark Reed and another newcomer, Raul. So that's going to be juicy. I'm trying to remember. It wasn't. Oh, no, it's David. David and Mark against Witsit and Raul. Also, though, this is going to be a big one. We're excited about it. Aaron Ra and Stewart will be debating whether or not there is evidence for God. That's next Wednesday. So that's going to be a big one. Whew. But it just keeps getting bigger. We have others. Conspiracy Cats, big time YouTuber in the science world. So science kind of debates and arguments, all sorts of fun stuff like that. He's going to be back with David McQueen on the age of the Earth. You don't want to miss that one. That'll be a great debate. Both guys it's been a pleasure to have both of them on, Conspiracy Cats as well as David, in the past. So we're excited for that one. And then further out, Daniel Hakikachu and Mike Jones from Inspiring Philosophy will be debating whether or not child marriage is acceptable. That's probably going to be at our next in-person conference. We've got a lot of big ones coming up. So we're excited about that. We're excited about the future. I want to say thanks for being with us, Osama Obama. You better behave in chat. We let you get away with murder here. Don't push it. You know, like Snack Entity. Good to see you. Glad to have you in the old live chat. Thanks for coming by. Wazalar says, what was your longest debate? Was it this one? I don't think it was this one, but this one's getting close. We don't usually go this long because it's been over 3.5 hours. Holy smokes, that's a long time. So for me, I'm like still thinking it's morning right now because that's when I started. It was like 10 a.m. here, and I'm like, oh, it's 1:30 in the afternoon. I was like, gotta get moving. So yeah, I gotta go. I gotta do a short post-credit scene here. I gotta drink this up and go work out. But good to see you, Mojo. Happy to have you, as well as Ever and DeFreak. All thoughts are Ellie's. Best be still and know. Verse 10. Thanks for coming by. I see you there in the old live chat, as well as S. Campbell. Glad to have you here. Snack Entity. Good to see you. Kamisama. Let me know if I'm saying it right. Glad to have you here. Wawan's. Glad you're here. Prince Vegeta. Good to see you again. Surgeon General. Thanks for all your support. Good to see you again. Mark Thompson. Glad you are here. Says, any news on DebateCon Part 3? Yes. We should hear back. I'm hoping to hear back from our scouts on what location it'll be at. We know it's going to be in Dallas. That's the plan. We're just trying to confirm the actual venue right now. So once we know that, we can put out the invites to speakers, which will be cool. Akil, good to see you there in the old live chat, says, is that date of the Daniel Hakikijo debate fixed yet? It's going to be April 20th, so I think I have to update it. I think right now it's set for like March. The Daniel Hakikijo one that you see on screen, though, that's a different one with Nuriyah. That one's actually going to be on February 22nd, so that'll be this month. R.I., good to see you there in the old live chat. Repent, glad you're here. Jungle Jargon, good to see you again. As well as Mr. Creenan, thanks for coming by. Happy to have you here. Heat Shield, good to see you again. Wilmar, glad to have you back. Akil, glad to have you with us. JBO2000, glad you are here. Says, next debate, is James Coons morally good? I can tell you, I'm far from perfect, but I am nonetheless glad that you were here, whether you be far from perfect, or maybe you're like, hey, I'm close to perfect. I don't know. What do you guys think? You can tell me in chat. We're glad you're here, though. People from all walks of life, we really appreciate you hanging out here at Modern Day Debate. We are a neutral channel. It is our goal. It is our vision to provide a level playing field so that everybody can make their case on a neutral debate platform. That's what we're determined to do in the future. We're excited about that. And we've got to tell you, in addition to that, we care about our values. And our values are, as we've talked about these before, we want people to have the freedom to say what they want, in particular to make the arguments they want, to take the positions that they take. We want to give everybody that fair shot, even the most controversial views, and that leads to our next value that we hold dear. A lot of people are like, James, that's dangerous. You can't give so-and-so a platform. You can't give this idea a platform. I've got to tell you, though, we can. And the reason is our second value is competition. We believe that the best arguments are going to win out. The cream will rise to the top. It is a natural selection of ideas here. The bad ideas, if they are dangerous or if they are stupid, then they'll be exposed here at Modern Day Debate, and that's a good thing because we believe competition helps refine. It makes things sharper. It makes things better. A lot of people are like, "Oh, I'm not into discussion. I'm just I'm like very pacifist." But we're like, no. Believe me, it makes us stronger. It's good to challenge yourself. It's good to have ideas challenged, as we believe. Like I said, if you let 1,000 flowers bloom, the good you say the good arguments, the good ideas, the good positions, they are going to come out on top. And my dear friends, we've got to say, we are excited about the future. We are optimistic. There is a bright future for Modern Day Debate. Join us now if you haven't already, because this is just the beginning of our story. We have big things to come. And we always want to make our guests feel, like I said, that they can say what they want. In particular, if they have a controversial religious view or a controversial anti-religious view, whatever it is, our guests were free from their first breath to say what they wanted, and we want it to stay that way. In particular, a lot of channels will say, oh, we have to do responsible platforming. We deplatform so-and-so. We deplatform these positions. We say, why? If you think that these ideas are so bad, why not we should let them be exposed? Isn't that good? Are you afraid that these dangerous people are winning? Do you really think they're winning all these debates? And that, because if you think that they're losing, which presumably, all these people, deplatform. If you think that these dangerous people out there are losing, well, then why would you want to deplatform? This is a great opportunity to put them on the platform on purpose so everybody can see all of their crap exposed and say, now I'm kind of inoculated against that. In other words, you could say I'm almost vaccinated in the old sense of the vaccine. They've got a small dose of it and then saw the refutation of it. And so now when they hear about it in the future, they're like, oh no, I know what you're trying to do here. I've heard these arguments before and I've heard the rebuttals to them before. I'm not going to be fooled. That's a good thing. And in fact, I can tell you the empirical research, because I'm getting my doctorate in, basically it's in psychology more broadly, in particular industrial organizational. And so we actually do cover the persuasion literature in my own field, IO psychology. I can tell you there's good empirical backing for my position in terms of our platforming position, where we are willing to take on the most controversial people and topics. And we think that actually it has a positive net good. So that's the thing, folks, is I've heard a lot, and that's the thing too, is when I've heard these deplatformers, they're usually, not always, but they're usually the ones that, they've got their Soylent, they're the blue-pilled soy boys. Not always, like I said, there's an exception. Not all. But a lot of them are, they're very sheltered. They're you got to keep things safe. And they're the kind of people that wear your bike helmet every time you get on your bike. I would say, hey, don't get me wrong. I understand there's a reasonable thing to think through this, but a lot of these people are they're afraid of everything. Oh, it's dangerous. Would someone think of the children? And we say, hey, you know what? We're going to give these people who have these dangerous or bad ideas a chance, because then when their ideas are exposed, that's a good thing for society. Not running from them, not running from the battle, but we are saying, hey, we're going to take it on and we're going to let it be exposed. My dear friends, a lot of people want to take the easy way out. And I would say that's what I think the deplatforming thing is and I think it's also, there's a combination of this sick moral narcissism of wanting to get off to their own, yes, I'm moral, so I don't associate with them. Which is, seems a little bit like you don't associate with them, getting up on the moral high horses. And a lot of times they'll even say, well, not only do I not associate with those, but I also don't associate with those who platform them. I'm extra morally pure. Is, like I said, Because a lot of them, they will tout it, like they'll kind of like wear it as a badge and tell people that. But I've got to say, like, when you look at the actual arguments in terms of what brings about the greatest good for the most people, I say, I don't know, in a consequentialist perspective, like the functional value of modern day debate is like, I think we actually bring about more good. And we're not the ones that are getting up on the moral high horse. We're just saying, hey, we think there's a good argument for why this is good, but we're not the types that are going to be like, oh, like I won't associate with them. I've got to tell you, my dear friends, we're glad that you are here, even if you're a soy boy, because we are, even if you're a soy boy and you want to promote soy in the chat, things like that. Because, we have people that, let's say, in the chat will sometimes say, look, oh, how dare you? Well, you should not platform these people. And we don't ban them. We're like, hey, like, if you want to be here, we'll let you criticize us. Like, we don't care. We know your arguments are that weak that we'll just let you, be in chat and embarrass yourself. So we're big on like, hey, we'll give everybody a chance, even those, even the soy suckers, the soy guzzlers. We'll let them, if they want to say that stuff, that's okay. So I want to say we appreciate. Yeah, that's right. Snack Entity says James putting the hammer on the safe space types. I get the idea of like not wanting to step on people's toes. I don't enjoy stepping on people's toes. Like, for example, I don't have any pleasure in like, like, oh, I want to like be hard on the Muslims, or I want to be hard on the atheists or the Christians. I'm like, no, I was like, I don't have any like axe to grind. At the same time, I think our society it's got this like toxic politeness of like catering to the neurotic rather than saying like, hey, listen, I mean, I got to tell you, on my university, I was told that if you can't say, oh, you look nice today, you can't say that to a colleague because they might interpret it to mean like, oh, so you mean I don't look nice on other days because you said today at the end of the sentence. And I'm like, if it's getting to the point where that's inappropriate to say you look nice today, this is getting kind of ridiculous in the sense that rather than giving this super neurotic person who takes it so poorly to be told that they look nice today, rather than helping them to learn how to deal with the hardships of life, like help them to become more adaptive and able to cope with stress, like the stressors of being told you look nice today. Rather than doing that, this is a great learning opportunity where we could do that. And we can say, hey, might be a way to do a little cognitive behavioral therapy with yourself and kind of try to reason through whether or not your interpretation of this is as catastrophic as you think or insulting as you think, where you think that they're out to get you or something. That would be what we should be doing. And that's why, for me, I am a little bit more casual with how I speak because I think it's a great opportunity where hopefully I can bring those things up rather than this kind of like bizarre enabling of the hyper neurotic people who are, interpreting things in the worst way humanly possible, which I think is like, if anything, we're patronizing them and ultimately harming them when we give into this like bizarre, sick, twisted, toxic politeness. The other thing that's toxic is you could call it toxic accusations of toxicity. There's such a thing because so many people, they call everything toxic, for crying out loud, is that at some point you have to wonder, like these people, you have to wonder at some point, it's like, but is everything as toxic as you say it is? Because I think that's like the new cool thing, to call everything toxic. You like, oh, let's find a way to call this toxic. Oh, like cool, like look at me, I found a way to say this is, a toxic positivity. Like, oh, all right, I'm going to find a way to, let me think of something else that's usually positive, and I'll find a way how to call this toxic. I honestly think a lot of this is like, it's to the point where it's like, we're getting a little bit excessive with always wanting to say, this is how something is toxic. This is how something is problematic. That's another big one. This is problematic. Oh, this is very problematic. This kind of like, these are the kind of people, like I said, they don't just wear a bike helmet while they're on their bicycle. I mean, they wear it 24/7. They go to sleep with a bike helmet on. They're just constantly worried and uptight about making these rules, about trying to protect everybody from everything. When in actuality, it's actually good if we say, hey, let's teach people how to handle the stressors of life, not try to eliminate all the stressors of life. Because the truth is, if you can't handle someone telling you, hey, you look nice today, I don't know how you're going to handle the hard things of life. Like when you lose a close friend or a family member, like there are so many harder things that it's like, all right, we might as well teach them to start being able to cope and adapt to things in terms of the hard things in life by using things like, you look nice today, so that they're actually prepared when the genuinely hard things come up. So want to say that's my little spiel, but want to say, I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. We hope that you're doing well. We hope you are enjoying modern day debate. We're going to be back tonight, like I said, whether it's me or Amy. I hate asking the moderators on normally I would have asked Amy like 2 days ago, but in this case I'm like, crap, I'm tired. I don't know. So whether it's me or Amy, we'll be back tonight. Want to say thanks, guys. I love you guys. Thanks for making this fun here. It's always fun, and we're excited about the future here at Modern Day Debate. We strive to fulfill the vision of providing a neutral platform so that everybody has their chance to make their case on a level playing field. We will see you at the next one. Thanks for all your support, folks. I love you guys, and I'll see you at the next one. Amazing!